So if everyone would please take a seat, we'd like to get started. I'd like to call to order the April 27, 2023 City Council meeting. Let the record reflect that all City Council members and city officials are present or in the building. If you have a mobile device with you, please make sure it is silenced or shut off. We are recording this meeting and we want to make sure we don't get interruptions, please. If you would please stand and join us for the invocation, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'd like to just read a statement from James Madison, because if we forget our founding fathers, we've forgotten the why we're here. We have staked the whole future of American civilization not upon the power of government, far from it. We have staked the future of all our political institutions upon the capacity of each and all of us to govern ourselves according to the Ten Commandments of God. Would you pray with me? Father of creation, we thank you for the privilege and the interest that you have in this meeting today. We thank you that we can request your presence because that is your promise. So we thank you that today you are here with these council members, helping them with wisdom and knowledge beyond their years of education and experience. And we thank you for your guidance today. We thank you for your peace to overwhelm the hearts of each person that will be involved in this meeting. And we thank you for leading us to be an amazing city that brings honor to you. Thank you for watching over each and every one that is in the service, protecting our future and protecting our well-being. We thank you for those here in the city that come to the aid when we need them, for the first responders and all those that are around them. Thank you for your presence in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, Pastor Frank. Okay. Our next meeting will be next Wednesday, May 3rd, back at the Military Heritage Museum at 9 a.m. Anyone have any other announcements before we move on? Nothing? Okay. Before we open up the floor for public comment, I have some housekeeping notes I'm going to read into the record, please. There is a code of conduct in the council chamber. Members of the public should familiarize themselves with the rules on the screen. Members of the public who wish to address council should use the guest microphone, standing just off to my slightly right. The podium to the right of the stage area is for staff and applicant presentations only. Speak directly into the microphone and begin by stating your name for the record. If it is a quasi-judicial hearing, please also state that you have been sworn in when it gets to be that time. Each person will have 3 minutes to speak, and sharing minutes is not permitted. Speakers are to direct all comments to the City Council, not the audience or any one individual council member. Discussion between speakers and members of the audience is not permitted. When there are many individuals who wish to speak, speakers should try not to reiterate lengthy comments made by others to ensure an effective and efficient meeting. This ensures everyone has an opportunity to speak. Audience and speakers will be courteous in their language and presentation. No applause, sidebar conversations, or booing before, during, or after each speaker. Please refrain from talking in the audience during the meeting. If you have supporting documents you wish to display during your comments, they must be provided to the city clerk, and they become part of the permanent record and will be retained by the clerk's office. The citizen comments portion of the meeting is not intended to be a question and answer session. This is for citizen comments only. Council members should refrain from answering impromptu questions or debating issues with members of the public. And with that, we will open up the floor for public comments on anything you wish to comment on. You will have 3 minutes. Please come to the microphone stand, and you please go ahead and get in line. We want to keep this meeting moving, so please stay in a... Yes, thank you.
My name is Nancy Johnson. I'm CEO of Team Punta Gorda. Good morning. As you proceed to with various aspects of the Freeman House renovation, I know Council's moving forward with that. I wanted you to be aware that at the suggestion of the Historic Preservation Advisory Board, we have formed a group called Friends of Freeman House. And we have convened 3 meetings so far to discuss possible future for Freeman House in a report that will be done with one more meeting next week, and then it will be forwarded to council. And it's a really good group. It's all the historic preservation groups in this community have come together with enthusiasm, and I think that this report perhaps will be helpful to council as they move forward. I just want you to know that it existed. We don't need anything at this time.
Great, thank you very much.
Yeah.
Hi there, Jeff Lustig. The Supreme Court's last case had to do with a government city taking property over fines and whether or not they had the right to keep the surplus from the building. I know that we had, it was called the Rat House, that there was some small surplus. Did the city keep that, or did they give it to the original owners? And it's something that the city attorney should look at. So in future things, because of the problems that people are having collecting for insurance, and with code enforcement now stepping up to enforce new regulations, I'm sure there will be a lot of fines. Several cities like Bradenton are using certain law firms to directly go after that. I hope we don't do that. I think that we shouldn't make code enforcement a money-making kind of thing. It should be to try to encourage people to be able to fix their houses and to be in good compliance. I'd also like to commend city staff for collecting $150,000 in grants for our police department, which you're voting on to accept. And thank you very much.
Thank you.
Good morning, City Council. My name's Tim Ritchie. I'm a resident of Punta Gorda. A few weeks back, I asked you all to write a letter to DeSoto's attorney and Charlotte County's attorney to get a joint letter, because at the Charlotte County Legislative Delegation meeting, I was a number and a speaker and requested $500,000 for the city of Punta Gorda, Charlotte County, and DeSoto. Now, I've spoken to a commissioner in DeSoto. He's all for it so that we can get a sediment testing database going with Brandon Moody. So please, let's get on that. Now, in the paper, in Charlotte County, we've got Sunseeker, we've got apartments going at Macy's, we've got 368 homes going to Jones Loop, and on and on and on. And Tuesday, on Charlotte County Utilities P1, Annual Authority Water Demand Projections. Up our river, we have an industry that is taking a lot of water. I'd like to find out how much water is Mosaic using in Manatee, DeSoto, Charlotte, and counties. Add all of it up. Is it more water than the citizens use in all 4 counties? I also asked you to write a letter following the city of Northport and Charlotte County to support DeSoto banning gypsex, but not authorizing and denying Mosaic's application. Our water, this is my comment, my statement. Clean drinking and bathing water are the most valuable commodities in the world. They provide all of us life, our animals. All this development is not good. A moratorium on development would be a great idea. I heard Cape Coral's putting a moratorium on something. They've put one on before. I know our commissioners in Charlotte are going to be looking into it through legal. We don't want our city growing anymore. This town will never be a ghost town, ever. This town is a small fishing village, quaint. We don't want it to be Naples or Sarasota. If we do, we go visit Sarasota and Naples. And lastly, I grew up in Pacific Palisades, California, in Malibu. The real high rent district. Highest taxes paid in the state. And I saw those communities ruined from development.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else that wishes to address council, please come to the podium. Please get in line if you plan to speak. We'd like to keep the meeting moving.
Good morning, and I'd like to say this is a much brighter morning than our last meeting. I want to call your attention to agenda item 8D as in dog. That's the city's projects for the county MPO project prioritization. More specifically, the shared use of the path bridge for South Fork Alligator Creek, a pedestrian and wildlife overpass. Several years ago, there was a similar construction at North Fork Alligator Creek. Some of you might not even know the outcome of that or where we were on that. I'd like to say that that still stands as the poster child of tax money waste in many people's view, certainly myself. Coming up from the south, you're greeted by the lights of that pedestrian bridge, the vast multi-million-dollar bridge that was built for what turns out to be limited use. Oh, certainly, ask, well, how could that possibly be? The city of Punta Gorda wouldn't possibly want to expend dollars like that. Don't worry, it's state tax dollars. We shouldn't be concerned. But you know what? I think the real answer is there the need? This is on our priority list. Should we be supporting that? Perhaps this might be similar to a fiasco years ago that the federal government had to justify $50,000 toilet seats. Is this another situation of that? Anyways, I would ask, excuse me, I would ask you to take a careful look at that, reconsider, is that something that we really want to do, and are there other possibilities that are still within the constraints of utilizing state dollars that might be higher priority than that? Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else wish to address council before we move on? Okay, seeing no one rise, we will move on. If there's anyone in the audience that has submitted a resume for consideration on a board or committee seat and you would like to introduce yourself to council, please come forward and introduce yourself. You will have 3 minutes. Okay, seeing none, we'll continue. The next item on the agenda is a service award. And do we have somebody that's going to present this? Are you?
I think that person's sitting next to me on my left.
Oh, okay. Oh, I'm like, oh, somebody to your left? I'm very pleased to present this 5-year service award to one of our excellent police officers, and he's been with us for 5 years and has done an exceptional job. He just won the Officer of the Year award from the police department, and I'd like to congratulate Officer, I believe it's PFC, Jesse Richards. I'll come bring her.
Yep, front and center.
Chance even came in to see you today. So.
Congratulations.
Good morning, everybody. Chief Pam Davis with the Punta Gorda Police Department, and I just want to say a couple words about Jesse. Come right over here. So Jesse began with us as a cadet in March of 2018. He actually was only the second officer I hired, so I think I did very well hiring him. He is exceptional, and I couldn't be any more proud. Within probably a few short weeks of the academy, I remember he was still in field training, and he came up to me and he said, "Chief, I want to be a K-9 officer. That's my dream job." And I was like, "Jesse, you need to be an officer for a little while first." And he's like, "I know, but I just want to let you know that." So he ended up developing to one of the most well-rounded police officers that I've seen in such a few short years, and so he was selected to be a K-9 officer. And he and his partner, K-9 Sasha, they became a team in 2021. Jesse's very community policing oriented, and he's just productive as can be, getting the bad guys off the street, as well as finding those vulnerable people in our community, children and some of the elderly. He is definitely one of the best canine teams in the county, I'll say, and ended up winning 3rd overall among 52 teams from Florida and surrounding states at the USPCA regional, just last month? So, great job. He's received numerous commendations, so bear with me. USPCA Case of the Quarter twice, the Elks Enrique Camarena Award for the entire state of Florida, PGPD Officer of the Quarter, PGPD Exceptional Duty Awards, several, PGPD Special Recognition Awards, also several, PGPD Life Saving Awards, Public Safety Appreciation Night 2022 Officer of the Year Award, and just like the mayor just said, he just received the Punta Gorda Police Officer of the Year Award. And there's 2 cases I want to quickly highlight. One was where he was monitoring the channel with the county. There was a vehicle that was fleeing from several agencies, and Sarasota's helicopter was following it. And Jesse was able to locate the vehicle, and then single-handedly detaining all 3 people that ran from the vehicle by himself until he got back up. But ended up, they threw 3 pistols that were modified to operate in full automatic capacity, marijuana, drug paraphernalia, and ski masks were located. So we don't know what their intentions were, obviously probably not good intentions. One had an active warrant out of Hillsborough County, so he did a fantastic job on that. December 22nd, 2022, probably one of the most cases that I think is, I'm so glad you were there. He responded to a home in Charlotte County to assist the CCSO with a canine track of 2 missing girls ages 4 and 3. PFC Richards and his canine partner Sasha started tracking nose to the ground along the streets until canine Sasha reached a vehicle and lifted her head. At this time, PFC Richards observed 2 white female juveniles, the ones that he was searching for, wearing only diapers, standing in the seats of the vehicle, and was able to return them safely to their parents. But we recently learned that vehicle belonged to a registered sex offender, and it's believed that he planned to take those girls away. We just happened to get there fast enough. So great job, Jesse. We are so happy to have you.
We are very blessed to have a wonderful team on both police and fire in our city. We're very, very lucky to have them all. So thank you, Officer Richards.
So I think what I heard is he has a very good dog.
Yeah, yeah, and the dog. Okay, next we have a proclamation for Arbor Day, and Vice Mayor Lockhart, you're up.
Good morning. Proclamation, City of Punta Gorda, Florida. Whereas in 1872, J. Sterling Morton proposed to the Nebraska Board of Agriculture that a special day be set aside for the planting of trees. And whereas this holiday, called Arbor Day, was first observed with the planting of more than 1 million trees in Nebraska and is now observed throughout the nation and the world. And whereas trees can reduce the erosion of topsoil by wind and water, cut heating and cooling costs, moderate temperature, clean the air, produce oxygen, and provide habitat for wildlife. And whereas trees are a renewable resource, giving us paper, wood for our homes, fuel for our fire, and countless other products. And whereas trees in our city increase property values, enhance the economic vitality of business areas, beautify our community, and are a source of joy and spiritual renewal whenever planted. And whereas in the past the city celebrated Arbor Day, was recognized by the Arbor Day Foundation as a Tree City USA, received the Tree City USA Growth Award, and was a recipient of the prestigious Sterling Award by the National Arbor Day Foundation. And whereas the city desires to begin the replacement of the tree canopies lost during Hurricane Ian and continue to support efforts to care for our community forest and educate our citizens on its importance. Now therefore, the City Council of the City of Punta Gorda, Florida does hereby proclaim Friday, April 28th, 2023 as Arbor Day, and urges all citizens to celebrate Arbor Day, support efforts to protect our trees and woodlands, and plant trees to gladden the hearts and promote the well-being of this and future generation. Passed and duly adopted in a regular session this 27th day of April 2023. City of Punta Gorda, Florida, signed Lynn R. Matthews, Mayor, and receiving this is Bob Seifert.
On behalf of the Historic Punta Gorda Civic Association, I'm pleased to accept this proclamation. Our organization has a committee that's been working with the city, thank you, Joan LeBeau, and the Florida Forest Service to get grants to replace the trees lost in Ian. And tomorrow is Arbor Day, and we invite all of you to come to the intersection of Gill Street and the Linear Park as we plant our first 2 replacement trees. Thank you. Look to seeing you there.
Thank you. Okay, next we have a proclamation for National Volunteer Week. Proclamation for the City of Punta Gorda, Florida. Whereas National Volunteer Week was established by presidential proclamation in 1974 to highlight the various opportunities available to those interested in volunteering, and whereas the Punta Gorda Police Department Volunteers in Policing program was established in 1997 and has 5 major program areas, including administration, records, volunteers on car patrol, volunteers on bicycle patrol, and volunteers on marine patrol. And whereas VIP program members contributed 8,978 hours of service to the Punta Gorda Police Department in fiscal year 2022. And whereas the Punta Gorda Police Department VIP program has 68 active members supporting our community, including support of our Do the Right Thing program, Police Pension Board, and Community Garden. And now, therefore, the City Council of the City of Punta Gorda, Florida does hereby proclaim April 16 to 22, 2023 as National Volunteer Week in Punta Gorda, and does hereby honor all of the men and women whose diligence and professionalism make the Volunteers in Policing program possible. Passed and duly adopted in regular session this 27th day of April, 2023, signed Lynn R. Matthews, Mayor. And accepting is, oh, there they are, all of our guys. Accepting is Craig Robinson and the team of volunteers from the Police Department Volunteer VIP program.
Oh, Justin wants a picture.
Not that quick.
Get the mayor in the middle somehow. There you go.
Thank you all very much.
Good morning, everybody. Chief Pam Davis, Punta Gorda Police Department. I just want to highlight a couple things with our volunteers. I'll try not to repeat everything that the mayor just said in the proclamation, but we have 3 actual volunteer programs, which is our chaplain program, volunteers in policing, which you see here, and our reserve police officers. It actually started in 1997 with a handful of members providing marine patrol services in our chaplain program, so it has been around for a long time. In FY22, there were 8,978 hours of volunteer time, which is equivalent to 4 full-time people for our department. So they actually help us get our job done. We couldn't do it without them. Volunteers on patrol conducted 6,531 directed patrols, which included schools, parks, and other locations that we identified that needed patrolling, with 17,658 miles. Marine volunteers patrolled our waterways and conducted 11,006 directed patrols and over 2,907 nautical miles. Record staff contributed 1,831 hours and greeted customers, data entry and filing, and our bike volunteers patrolled 3,155 miles on our pathways, parks, and roadways. We handled several special events: Port Charlotte High School bike event, elite event half marathon, July 4th, Military Heritage Museum, car show, Girls on the Run, Memorial Day 5K, Pedal and Play, Sullivan Street Fair, Taste of Punta Gorda, Wheels and Wings. That's just to name a few. I won't even get it. I think you guys are getting the picture that they do a lot. Could not do it without our coordinators, which is VIP Volunteer Administrator Craig Robinson, and you see all our deputy coordinators here who basically run each of those sections. We also have Bill Klossner as our senior chaplain and Chaplain Jim McConnell, and then our reserve officers Larry Schrader and Eric Klaus. And Craig, did you want to say a couple words?
On behalf of all the VIPs, I want to thank the mayor and council for our recognition. We enjoy what we do every day and give it back to the community, and thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Volunteer leader.
Okay, next we have another proclamation. This is in honor of National Telecommunications Week. Whereas emergencies can occur at any time that require police, fire, or emergency medical services, and whereas when an emergency occurs, the prompt response of police officers, firefighters, and paramedics is critical to the protection of life and preservation of property. And whereas the safety of our police officers and firefighters is dependent upon the quality and accuracy of the information obtained from citizens who telephone the Punta Gorda Police Communications Center, and whereas public safety telecommunicators are the first and most critical contact our citizens have with emergency services. And whereas telecommunicators are the vital link for monitoring police officer and firefighter activities by radio, providing them information and ensuring their safety. And whereas they contribute substantially to the apprehension of criminals, suppression of fires, and treatment of patients. And whereas they exhibit compassion, understanding, and professionalism during their performance of their job. And whereas in fiscal year 2022, Punta Gorda's telecommunicators answered 34,446 administrative phone calls and 10,042 911 emergency phone calls, contributing to a police officer average response time of 6 minutes and 9 seconds for all calls. Now, therefore, the City Council of the City of Punta Gorda, Florida, does hereby proclaim the week of April 9 to 15, 2023 as National Telecommunications Week, and does hereby honor all of the men and women whose diligence and professionalism keep our city and citizens safe. Passed and duly adopted in this regular session, this 27th day of April, 2023, signed Lynn R. Matthews, Mayor. And accepting will be the head of our Telecommunications Division, Audrey Dennis, and Heather Shaughnessy is with her. And I just want to say they also just received the Police Chief's Annual Award for the Team of the Year for exceptional duty during the hurricane, before, during, and after the hurricane. When Charlotte County and Lee County and Sarasota County's 911 centers went down, our team took all those calls, and God bless them all for doing it. It was a monumental task, and you guys are awesome. Thank you.
Good morning, members of City Council and Mayor. Jason Ciaschini with the Police Department. Just want to talk just a moment about our public safety telecommunicators here in Punta Gorda. Our communications section staffed 24 hours a day, 7 days a week by 2 to 3 public safety dispatchers. We have a staff of 9 full-time dispatchers, 1 full-time senior dispatcher, and 1 supervisor. They're responsible for all Punta Gorda Police Department radio traffic and all Punta Gorda Fire Department radio traffic. They're also responsible for answering all police administrative telephone calls and administrative phone calls, as well as 911 lines that come into the city of Punta Gorda. We, as the mayor indicated, are also the backup public safety answering point to the Charlotte County Sheriff's Office. Every entry-level telecommunicator here at the Punta Gorda Police Department completes a minimum of 15 weeks of training. They're certified by the Department of Health as a 911 public safety telecommunicator. They're certified as an emergency medical dispatcher. They're certified as an emergency fire dispatcher. They're certified as an emergency police dispatcher and also certified as a full access Florida Crime Information Center operator. Most of our dispatchers have much more extensive training, and our dispatchers have to maintain a minimum of 20 hours of retraining every 2 years in order to maintain their certifications. As the mayor answered, we got a lot of phone calls coming to our communications center. When we add in the outgoing telephone calls last year, we processed about 63,000 phone calls in that one center between our incoming and our outgoing telephone calls. In a typical month over the past few years, we'd see about 3,500 to 4,000 telephone calls come in 1 month. This fiscal year, we're seeing consistently over 5,000 phone calls coming in monthly. This fiscal year, we've seen a 47% increase in our overall incoming telephone call volume compared to the same time frame last year. As a matter of fact, this past month of March, we had 6,179 phone calls come into this center in 1 month. That's 68% higher than March of last year. In my 26 years as a Punta Gorda Police Department employee, I have never seen these levels of phone calls coming into our center. Not only do they answer the phone, we also process and monitor all of the police events that are going in at our department. Last year, they had over 47,000 of them occur. They also processed almost 4,800 fire events. Fire department events alone have increased 11%. So all the fire rescue emergencies have gone up 11% that these folks have handled this year. So as we know, our first customer point of contact are these folks right here. As the mayor mentioned, they did a fabulous job during Hurricane Ian, and they were recognized quite a bit at our most recent award ceremony, and we thank them for what they do.
Thank you. Thank you.
Speechless.
Thank you all very much. Okay, at this time, we will adjourn as City Council and reconvene as the Community Redevelopment Agency. Good morning. Ready? Okay, we are now in session as the Community Redevelopment Agency. First agenda item is citizen comments. If there's anyone in the audience that would like to address the commission on any items on this agenda for just the CRA meeting, please come forward, state your name for the record, and you will have 3 minutes. Seeing no one come forward, next item is the approval of the minutes from the March 1, 2023 meeting.
I motion to...
You got to turn your mic over.
Second. I motion to approve the minutes.
And we have a motion and a second to approve the minutes from the March 1, 2023 meeting. Any further discussion? All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Okay, Mr. Murray, you're up.
Just a brief update on things that are happening within the CRA. We'll start with our municipal marina activity. You can see March over March last year to this year, 17 annual rentals. We have 2 semi-annual, 23 monthly, still filling up most of the slips. 4 transients, commercial moorings are steady at 14. We do have 4 moorings on the balls. Of course, that's one of the things that I'll discuss as we move through the CRA that has currently been evaluated. And our liveaboards, we do have 1 liveaboard back. That was a short duration, a couple months in liveaboard and back out, which is really the intent of our lease. So we're still moving forward with that. We do have several construction projects underway. With the marina, we have the finger piers that were previously damaged and that were broken free during the storm that have been removed, and we're working on getting the new finger piers reinstalled with the contractor. That part of that contract was to remove the old, so that is underway. And we have the report from Hans that actually had some divers out in the harbor and looked at the pier, the fishing pier, and other things around the marina. So we're waiting to evaluate that completely, and then we'll have some recommendations on projects moving forward in the marina itself. Pump out vessel comparison. You can see we're back up to about 87 last month. 81 of those were Florida vessels. Still over 2,000 gallons pumped that we prevent from going where it shouldn't. That's a service that, of course, is provided to boaters, and then that's properly disposed of and treated. About 130 miles that have been traveled with our boat, and of course that boat's also grant funded, and we're pleased to be able to provide that service and help keep our harbor clean. When we look at our quarterly report, of course, that's just a summary of the reports that you've heard for January, February, and March. We had 265 vessels total. Only 13 were out of state. We've 265 Florida vessels, 278 total, over 400 miles, and almost 7,000 gallons total that have been pumped to provide that service to the boaters in and around our marinas. Our annual report, this is just informational. This is the report that, of course, we provided to the county commissioners when we were there, as we're required to do, and that is online. Anyone that wants to look at the CRA annual report, to look at our financials, et cetera, it's available for viewing. To get into a couple of the projects, our historic City Hall rehab and expansion, we do have the 60% cost estimates from the construction manager at risk. Those are estimates that we're getting to work towards the 90% plans where we can get a guaranteed cost not to exceed, and we'll be discussing that in much more detail as we go into our regular meeting today. Gilchrist Park, our Harbor Walk, Phase 2, the contractor has very few things left to do. I anticipate completion on some of the small punch list items in the next 45 days. Of course, we have our plaques up. We have several things that were needed as we move through completion, so that we can have a couple dedication ceremonies that have been required. So that park is looking very nice. Obviously, you can see the use, especially with the nice weather we've been having, and we're pleased to be able to have that amenity in the city that's now essentially completed. When we talk about A.C. Freeman House, another one that we'll get into in much more detail as we go through the agenda, Christel Construction of Fort Myers was our sole responsible bidder for the RFQ for construction manager at risk, same ones that are working on City Hall, so they certainly know the city and they know what we require. We're comfortable with them, and there was a scoping meeting April 5th for clarification of the services, and the award of the contract was at that point contingent upon granting agency approval, but of course we have $497,000 as part of our funding for A.C. Freeman, so anything we're doing there, they also have to approve as we move forward, so we're sure we can use the grant funding and don't disqualify it in any manner, which they have now approved. Lashley Park Splash Pad. This is a picture from 1960 when it started. So we're kind of
like
getting
the
there.
wayfindings.
Yes. It's actually, we have the equipment, we have the shade structures, et cetera, and certainly are moving forward with that. We now have a contractor. Staff has been reviewing the construction proposal, and we have a recommendation to move forward with that. It'll be brought to City Council for complete review and approval, but with their construction services, some of the recommendations that they've made, and the equipment that we have on site, we should be able to get started with that fairly quickly and then get that under construction so that we can complete it and use the amenity. If you go out there on the weekends, you can see people still using the splash pad that's there. The water is probably about a foot high right now, but they're still able to use that and enjoy it with the children. So we want to get this under construction because it is a very nice amenity for the city. Our government center fencing, we were using this because as we go under construction, we need to make sure we secure the site as well as provide security during normal operations so that people can't wander through the site and expose themselves to tripping hazards and things coming off neighboring properties that this fence would prevent. So that's been in the works for a while. We, of course, we're waiting for the material to arrive for quite some time, and that's on site, so ERS is going to be installing that fencing. Other than that, I did want to just make a couple comments about projects in the CRA. We do have, for example, projects in almost a circular fashion the whole way around the CRA, starting with the community room, the office that we're currently in. That office has soffit damage, certainly not on top of the list, but that's one of the things that is being scoped out so that that damage can be repaired. There's a couple birds that have taken a liking to it right now, even though it's fairly secure. So we'll be working on that as we move. On over to Veterans Park, of course, the pavilion there sustained wind damage. We had an evaluation done. That report has now come back in, and that report shows that it's 7 inches off center and that there's structural damage to the members that support that. They have suggested that it may be as cost effective to completely remove the structure and rebuild it. We only have less than $40,000 from insurance, so that will not cover the whole cost, but we're getting structural analysis separately to dovetail with the report to see if we should try to repair or completely replace that pavilion so that can move forward. So that project's also moving. As we get to Harold Court Center, there's a whole scoping project for Harold Court Center, everything from the doors that had to be ordered, and of course that's one of the things that's very difficult to get through some of the stages of the parking structure. We have awnings that are on the side towards the courthouse that were ripped up that have to be completely replaced. We have several things within Harold Court Center itself that need to be redone or rebuilt because of Hurricane Ian. So that whole scope is going out so that we can get that completed, get the doors back on. The tower to the southeast, if you go up to the top of the parking deck in that tower, you can see that there's roof and inside damage to that. That's all things that need to be addressed. And hurricane season is coming quickly, so we don't have much time to get a lot of this done, or at least secured as we move on around the city. We come to, of course, City Hall and our annex where we had third floor damage. The scoping and project is now ready to be bid for that. So we'll have bids coming back in on that so that we can get the third floor back in service and staff back into the third floor so that everything's consolidated in one building and readily accessible to the public. One of the things we will have to do is we look and talk in the upcoming agenda items about city council is we're going to be ready to move forward with that very quickly. So we have to make sure we have a place for staff also that is in the old city council chambers to operate that's still convenient to the general public while we're going through the process. And then last but not least, at least for the nutshell summary, is Bayfront Center. We're still working on that as far as our environmental engineering, because the thing that we're waiting for now is a report that shows if there is or is not asbestos in the building so that we can bid it out properly for raising the building down to at least the concrete slab. Now, asbestos not meaning that there was an air quality issue or anything like that, but when you have older buildings, even the mastic underneath the tile that holds it down, when they start removing that tile, if there's any asbestos fibers in that because of the time frame as to when it was installed, that all has to be removed separately and then the building taken down after that mitigation has occurred. We don't know if there is or is not, but we have to have the analysis done before we do that. So that's generally some of the projects around the CRA. All of them are moving forward nicely, and we have things in progress to make sure all those continue and happen so that we can get back in service with all our amenities.
Any questions for Mr. Murray?
Greg, thanks you. That was a great report. One of the items I had on my list was the gazebo at the Veterans Park. And so we've always had our Memorial Day ceremonies at the park. The only time we didn't do it was during COVID in 2020. And then we live streamed the Memorial Day program from the museum. So this year we will do a small presentation at 10 a.m. at the wall, and then we'll do a more formal program back at the theater and the golf in the museum. So we appreciate, talking to General Carr, we really appreciate the efforts to try to get that fixed as quickly as possible.
Yep, that's a good one we need to get completed.
Yeah, and the other thing I do want to recognize, it's in the CRA district, is the work that's being done at the Women's Club by the Punta Gorda Historical Society. They just received a grant of $39,000 from the Marie Selby Foundation to address some of the challenges they're having with that, and the roof will be replaced at some time in the near future through with insurance money. So good work for that particular nonprofit agency.
Great.
Anyone else? Donna?
Greg, talking about the Bayfront Center, I believe several months ago, we talked about establishing a committee of sorts, working with the city to talk about future use.
That's
And I really do think it's probably time to, maybe on the next agenda, we should talk about the composition of that group. My own personal opinion is it needs to include the tenants of the building at that point, which would have been the YMCA, Learn to Sail, obviously the city's involved, and of course, I need to remind folks that we need to have a representative of the historic district neighborhood which adjoins it. But I do think it should be an agenda item, and we should get going.
That's a good point. We're at a point that in the near future, hopefully we'll be able to put a contract out to take it down, and then we need to know where we're going with that, which will take a little bit of time in itself. So that's a good point that we should get that moving.
Thank you. Anyone else?
We'll put that on the agenda.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, commissioner comments? Mr. Kuharski?
Nothing.
Mr. Dryberg?
Nothing.
Mr. Butler?
Nope.
Ms. Lockhart?
None.
Mrs. Peterman?
None.
Okay, and I have none, so therefore we are adjourned and we will reconvene as City Council. Thank you. All right. We are now back in session as City Council. We do not have any public hearings on today's agenda. We do have one resolution.
Yes, this is a resolution which I'll read by title only. A resolution of the City Council of the City of Punta Gorda, Florida, accepting a bill of sale, release of liens affidavit of no liens from Punta Gorda Acquisitions 2 LLC and warranty from Hollander Construction Company, Inc. for wastewater transmission force main located within Piper Road North right-of-way between Duncan Road and East Henry Street, providing for conflicts and severability and providing an effective date.
Mr. Murray?
Yep, this basically we're accepting the force main, or yes, the pipe that was installed when we worked with the airport for the turn lane, et cetera, and they are required then to certify that they have no outstanding liens and that it's ready to turn over to the city.
Thank you. Okay, Mark?
So I would just like to confirm then that we have an easement now, which was a contention originally on this project, and if there's any cost involved in the future on this, that would be borne by the airport. Is that my understanding correct?
That's correct.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions on this? Okay, we need a motion, please.
Move to approve 6A.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve the resolution accepting the bill of sale, release of liens affidavit of no liens from Punta Gorda Acquisitions. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Okay, next we have consent agenda, which consists of minutes from the March 1 meeting, March 15 meeting, March 21 meeting, the renewal of the city attorney agreement, 3 resolutions regarding the Edward Byrne Memorial Justice Grant Program for Punta Gorda Police Department, and one for a resolution for grant funding from the Charlotte County MAC Group. Anyone have anything they'd like to pull? Okay, then we need a motion for approval.
Move to approve.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve consent agenda. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Okay, next we move on to item number 8A, which is drug-free Punta Gorda request.
Good morning, Madam Mayor and council members. My name is Ashley Chandler. I'm representing Drug Free Punta Gorda. I'm the project coordinator. Excuse me. So thank you for the opportunity to speak to you this morning regarding the city's current ordinance in regards to smoking and vaping in city parks and playgrounds, and we ask you to consider the benefits that may occur with the changing of this policy to include all city parks. Presently, in Section 16.4 of the City Code, which was adopted in 2010, the only places where smoking is prohibited in city parks are the Lashley Park Fountain, Gilchrist Park, Kittyland, Ponce de Leon Park's Children's Area, and Cooper Street Rec Center. A little background, prior to July 1st, 2022, cities, towns, and counties were not able to restrict smoking as they saw fit to protect the health of their citizens and environment because the state of Florida had a preemption. But with the last year's passage of House Bill 105 and SB 224, communities have been given back that authority and now have a choice. Charlotte County Commissioners who had already banned vaping and e-cigarette use in Charlotte County operated parks, playgrounds, and beaches in February 2020 seized the opportunity they had been waiting for. And in October of last year, changed the county's ordinance to ban all smoking, including tobacco and vapes in county-owned parks and beaches in order to protect the health, safety, and welfare of its citizens. According to the Florida League of Cities, since July 1st, no less than 28 other cities in the state, and at least since 2 days ago, 3 counties have banned smoking in their parks and beaches. Sarasota County just approved 2 days ago, so that's a good thing. On behalf of Drug Free Punta Gorda, I would like to ask that you consider doing the same. Why would we want to do that? Protect the health and safety and welfare of our community citizens, particularly our children and young adults who are so vulnerable and greatly impacted by the effects of secondhand smoke, which we know are numerous and well documented. Tobacco smoke contains more than 7,000 chemicals, of which hundreds are toxic and about 70 can cause cancer. There is no risk-free level of secondhand smoke exposure. Also, e-cigarette vapor is not harmless water vapor, as some may mistakenly believe. The aerosol that is exhaled from e-cigarettes can also contain harmful substances and chemicals. Cigarette butts, unfortunately, are the most littered item found in our roadways, storm drains, beaches, rivers, and the environment. They are not biodegradable, and the plastics and toxic chemicals in cigarettes and their filters can be harmful to the water supply. Tobacco litter can be devastating to marine and wildlife as well, and birds sometimes mistake them for food, causing malnutrition and starvation and sometimes death, sadly. Support the economy by increasing tourism due to clean, pristine parks and playgrounds. Florida visitors expect to experience clean, fresh air, free of tobacco and vape smoke and unlittered environment, which is why all parks and beaches of California, Hawaii, Maine, and New Jersey are smoke-free, as well as the over 1,500 municipalities across America prohibit smoking in their parks. We are concerned over the increase of vaping and smoking amongst our youth and teenagers in recent years. Denormalizing the changing social norms around the use of tobacco and nicotine while providing fewer opportunities will prevent people, including teens, from starting to smoke and vape. This would encourage people to make healthy choices and increase quit attempts. A comprehensive tobacco and vape-free park and beach ordinance in the city of Punta Gorda would align directly with the newly adopted ordinance in Charlotte County, so there would be no confusion from residents and visitors between these public recreational areas. I ask that you please consider changing the city of Punta Gorda's policy to match that of Charlotte County, where all county-owned and operated beaches, parks, and playgrounds are now tobacco and vape-free. Thank you so much for your time and consideration of this ordinance change.
Thank you. Mark.
Thank you very much for your presentation. Just a couple of comments I would add. I sit on the Drug Free Punta Gorda Committee, and I was there at the meeting when this came up. As much as the presentation was about secondhand smoke and the litter, which is all absolutely correct, the discussion at the meeting was more about the second half of your presentation, which was the effect this has on the youth, particularly on drug use and vaping. And the conversation was really just to bring our ordinance in line with what the county ordinance is. And when you read the ordinances, it's kind of obvious that we have an anti-smoking, but nothing in there about vaping, and what they pretty much did is add vaping. So obviously this is something that we can't decide on today. This is something that if we agreed that this was something we wanted to move forward with, we would have to have an ordinance drafted and then put on a future agenda for consideration, but I'm fully supportive of going in that direction.
Donna?
I totally agree with Mark, and never having smoked, I'm all for, banning it and vaping. My only question is, how do you enforce it? I mean, so we have an ordinance, and I live across the street from Gilchrist Park, so if they're not smoking in the park, they're smoking in the parking space right in front of the park. So how would you go about enforcing that?
Well, if I may, what I believe will begin to happen, and is what I see already happening within our community, is I believe a lot of our citizens and community members will be helpful in helping us to enforce that. I mean, not that we need to have somebody at parks and areas making sure that this isn't happening, but I do truly believe that the community, we need to provide education is the number one thing I believe. And then once we provide the education as much as possible, I feel that community members will be helping us in enforcing that. Not in a rude way, but to say, if there's signage there that they can say, excuse me, this is not allowed here in this park or this area. And for the most part, I think that will help us get things moving, and then maybe we can decide how to enforce it later a little bit more. But that's kind of my take on the thing.
Bill?
I actually worked on one for the county. It came before my committee as the Parks and Recs Board. And our problem was, and we're obviously going to have it here, is enforcement. Because the enforcement part of it comes under the sheriff in the county. It's going to come under our police department here within the city. I think you're right. I think some citizens will come up and say, listen, it's not legal here, but you're still going to get that individual out there that just don't care. And then eventually, a couple of people get cited, and that gets around the city. Hopefully will stop it. But that's been the main problem in the county, and it's going to be the main problem here too.
Yeah, and I totally understand that. And I think that because we do already have this ordinance in place in the areas where the children are playing, and hopefully people have begun to already start to help us enforce that once everything is exactly the same and there's not that much confusion, that our community will come together and help one another. And we will do our part as much as possible as far as educating the community as well, to let them know that this ordinance is in place. And, when we have events and things like that, do what we can to help educate the community.
I would like to say I totally agree with Mark and Donna. I am all for this. I think we need to update our ordinance to be an actual mirror of the county's ordinance and include everything that's in their ordinance. However, I do have a question, and I don't know who can answer this, but why do we not include cigars? What's the deal about cigars?
To be honest, I am not sure why unfiltered cigars are not included. Maybe because there's such a small amount of community members, or if any, that actually...
Oh, no. They're everywhere.
Oh, I don't know why that is. Honestly, I would have to look into that because I'm not sure.
Mr. Levin, do you have a comment on that?
I'm not sure, other than the fact that it looks to me like under our ordinance, smoking includes cigars.
But, when I'm looking at the counties, it specifically says, where is it?
And I believe the unfiltered cigars is because it also doesn't create the litter, because there's no filters in the plastic, and, so I'm not, I don't think that's the main reason, but...
As long as there's no legal reason why we can't include it, I would like to see our ordinance incorporate that into the verbiage as well. But I totally agree.
That was one of the comments that we would have to discuss and give our attorney time to review it. In 2010, our ordinance had a smoking definition which defines inhaling, exhaling, burning, carrying, possessing related tobacco products, including cigarettes, cigars, pipe tobacco, any other related tobacco products. It says tobacco specifically. In 2017, that update for Veterans Park updated the definition and then included as well as the inhaling, vaping, and use of electronic cigarettes. The county's definition, if we combine those so that it applies to all parks, use the county's definition, et cetera, it expands that somewhat, but there was some discussion of a statutory limitation where unfiltered cigars had to be excluded because of a state regulation. So that's something that we can
we need to look into
that. Review before.
I think we should do it across the board. That's just my personal opinion. When it comes back to us in the form of a resolution, I'd like to see it, or even an ordinance, I would like to see it include all of that. Did you?
I totally agree with that. I think we need to look into it, make sure that there isn't anything that doesn't say that, but I'm all for that as well.
Okay, so consensus is that we would like to have staff go forward with updating our ordinance to reflect a mirror image of the county, yes?
Yes.
Okay, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you very much.
All right. Next, we have an award of amendment number 15 to Carollo Engineers of Sarasota to provide professional services for the rehabilitation of well number 4 at the Shell Creek Reverse Osmosis Treatment Plant. Good morning, Ann.
Good morning, Ann Heinen, Procurement. This is based under a master agreement that was previously approved by City Council in 2019 for engineering services for the public water supply, and it was awarded to Carollo Engineers. During a previous authorization, which was executed, it was for the evaluation and analysis of the well. During that evaluation and analysis, it indicated that improvements to the well were necessary. Therefore, staff requested a proposal based on the negotiated hourly rates to prepare bid documents, specifications, and cost estimates in order to do the improvements, and for the city to use those documents in order to go out to bid for a well contractor to perform those improvements. The specific authorization will also include the consultant to provide contractor oversight while the improvements are made to the well and coordination of the project. The total cost is $81,337.50, and the time frame for the improvements for the composition of the specifications will be 6 months from the notice to proceed. Staff is recommending the award of amendment number 15 to Carollo Engineers of Sarasota, Florida.
Melissa?
I just wanted to kind of clarify something. So the work that's going to be done is just simply rehab of what's existing?
Correct.
It's not any expansion, it's just rehabbing what we currently have?
Correct.
Thank you.
And we have to, as a matter of general practice, evaluate those wells periodically, make sure they stay in good shape, have the engineering firm then, of course, make recommendations and maintain them as recommended.
Any other questions? Okay, we need a motion.
I'll move to approve award amendment.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve agenda item 8B, award of amendment number 15 to Carollo Engineers. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries unanimously.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, next we have the City Hall Rehabilitation and Expansion 60% budget estimates.
Good morning. For the record, Mitchell Austin, Urban Design. Excuse me. Adjusting to the new technology here. So the City Hall Rehabilitation and Expansion Project is of course underway, and today we'll be presenting the 60% budget estimate from the construction manager at risk. Just briefly, project overview-wise, we are rehabilitating the historic City Hall and expanding that facility for council chambers. This is the visualization of the West Marion Avenue facade. The project will have, as currently designed, would have approximately, or just under 12,000 square foot of roof area. There would be 3 floors, so the ground floor with council chambers and city offices, the second floor with city offices, and the third floor with future city offices. The total building square footage is just over 19,000 square feet, with just over 7,000 square feet of that being the historic rehabilitation project. The project architect, as part of their contract, did provide an opinion of probable cost. That probable cost was presented along with 60% plans at approximately $10.8 million. So what is a construction manager at risk? It's a project delivery method where the project owner, in this case the city, is hiring a construction manager to take the project from some point in the design phase all the way through to the completion of the construction. The CMAR offers a guaranteed maximum price at the construction bid phase, and the CMAR is responsible for delivering that project at or below that price. Any overrun in that actual cost of construction would be at their risk, not the project owners, and any cost savings, so the incentive for them delivering the project in a timely and cost-effective manner, is any cost savings is shared between the project owner and the CMAR. So Christel Construction is the construction manager at risk. They have 3 tasks under their pre-construction services: a 60% budget estimate, which we're presenting today, a 90% budget estimate, and then that guaranteed maximum price at the end. So the 60% budget estimate, which the full report is in the agenda, is a detailed cost estimate, a list of qualifications and constructions, some information about their billable rates for Christel, and an enumeration of the documents that they use to generate this cost estimate, budget estimate. So the total here is, of their estimate, is $11.8 million, and that is just under $300 a square foot in terms of construction costs, which aligns with what we're seeing out there in private sector construction. So from that cost estimate, there are exclusions. So these are known costs that are not included in the actual construction contract, and that's like building fees and permit fees, fixtures, furnishings, and equipment. There is some of that included in terms of special spaces like the city council chambers. However, most of it is equipment that the city either already owns or will be required to purchase to fit out the building, and other services, sort of unknown costs like any sort of additional environmental or hazardous material testing or remediation, disposal, replacement of unsuitable soils, those types of items. There are also some additional items that we know right now will be included that haven't been estimated yet, and that's the cost of the relocation of the Florida Power and Light Solar Now connection equipment, which is currently on the back of the old council chambers. So that will need to be relocated on site until we get closer to final construction plans. Florida Power and Light won't even begin to talk to us about the estimate for what that will cost. Additionally, with the building design, there's going to be a severing of the accessible route from the existing ADA parking in the Government Center parking lot and the front entrance on Harvey Street to the City Hall Annex building. So there's some additional site work to include ADA parking on Harvey Street, which is not in this 60% plan or estimate. So as we're moving forward with this project, upcoming milestones are all happening this summer, late summer. We have 90% design plans and cost estimates are anticipated in June, July. Construction plans in August, and that guaranteed maximum price in September. Those timelines are based on moving forward with, or continuing to move forward with the plans relative to what we see at 60%.
Can I interrupt with a question?
Sure.
So you mentioned all these things that are not included in the 60%. In what phase do they get included so we actually have an all-in bottom line everything number?
So that will come, we can certainly start detailing many of those additional costs at the 90% phase where the design plans are closer to constructability. And some of those items will come in at the final construction plan phase.
And would those costs then also be included in the guaranteed maximum price?
No, those costs are out. Most of those costs detailed in this presentation are actually outside of the construction contract because we don't want to pay them we don't want to pay the contractor their fees, their profit essentially on those items that we can procure ourselves.
So at what point do we actually start and finish construction based on this timeline?
Based on this timeline, the actual construction should start in the fourth quarter of this year, this calendar year, and the completion, I think their estimate, Christel Construction is estimating about 12 months.
So we're talking maybe October or November next year?
Yes.
Okay. Anybody else questions? Okay, so what do you need from us at this time?
A, we're just providing an update, and B, in terms of the funding, we know that we'll either need to add additional funding to this project or look for some substantial value engineering, like reducing the size of the building, if the cost is unpalatable as it stands right now. So we just want confirmation.
I'd like to see us come in on the lower end of the contingency fund for sure, because that's ridiculous. Really ridiculous.
I'd like to ask Greg if he could comment on the funding sources. He and I had conversation about this, but so there's obviously, I mean, when we approved this in the beginning, I don't think anybody really thought that 10.7 and 10.8 was the end number, but at that point, we knew exactly where the funding was coming from. Now we're looking at more, and I'd just like to have it on the record for where this funding is expected to come from, because it does sound from our conversations like we have the funding, but I'd like people to know where it's coming from.
Yeah, we do, of course, have a multi-year projects that will be over several fiscal years. We had the original estimate that included a little over 900,000 in contingency, and now, of course, that's a 10% number. So the higher the construction number, the higher the contingency. With this one, you see that there was 1.1 million in contingency. So we're essentially back to the 10.8 number if we spent none of that. With that contingency, I'm going to ask Kristen to talk a little bit about the monies that we have available in our 1% sales tax and other excess funds that we can use for this, because we know we're using some of that for other projects, and we know that we have excess not only this year, but then of course we're going into the next fiscal year where we anticipate excesses. So.
Kristen Simeone, Finance Director. So some of the additional funding sources that we have identified was we have approximately $300,000 from the sale of the Bel Air property. We have approximately, the estimates for the insurance proceeds from the storm are approximately $350,000 to $450,000. We don't have any final numbers yet, but those were the original estimates provided from the insurance company.
Part of that was roof damage, et cetera, that was recovered.
We have, for fiscal year 2023, we are projecting additional 1% sales tax. Of course, we've seen an increase in sales of materials as well as the cost prices going up. So we are taking in more sales tax on those items. So we think we'll have approximately $875,000 to add to this fiscal year's budget, or for other projects as may be needed. I think there's some additional projects that we'll be talking about as well. And then, of course, as we work through our fiscal year 24 budget, which we hope to bring to you at least we'll talk about the construction funds probably mid-May. We can talk about where we're at for all of our projects, or maybe some other projects that are coming in under budget.
So 1% sales tax, additional revenues that were not counted originally, like sale of property, and then of course our insurance monies altogether are well over $1 million by themselves. So we'd be looking at what we can use of that for this project.
So we're at 60% plans, and we saw roughly a 10% increase from the original estimate. My understanding, and correct me if I'm wrong, is that now we're going to the 90% plans, that the 60% plans already include anticipated inflation, and there shouldn't be much change unless we make changes to the plans, to the program. So we should not expect a large or any increase going from 60 to 90%. Is that correct?
I'm going to let Mitchell answer that as
I
he's
knew that
working
was,
with the
I
engineer.
knew you were going to do that. That's okay.
Again, for the record, Mitchell Austin, Urban Design. The construction costs continue to escalate. At least that's the recent history. Interest rates are going up. The market may be cooling down a little bit. Prices are not guaranteed at any rate, at any time. For the time where we will have a good idea of what this building is going to cost is at that guaranteed maximum price phase. That's all I can say for sure.
Bill?
With all that said, Mitchell, can these timelines be moved up?
We're actually moving pretty aggressively, given the complexity of the design process and the moving pieces that are left to put together. This is about as fast as everybody can get the job done.
And one of the problems is that, of course, the engineering firms have a lot of work right now because of Ian, if nothing else. And we've said we want this done in the next few months because we can't languish. Because, as you said, even though we have some inflationary pricing and even though they're pricing out 60% plans, which means we're getting pretty close to the 90% where we shouldn't see change in cost, everything continues to go up, and it might be outside of what was even built into the project itself. So that's where we would see the pricing, not really because of any changes we're making or anything that was unforeseen at this point in the design. It would be simply market-driven.
Any other questions? Okay, thank you very much. I think we should take a 10-minute break before we get into the other agenda items. So we'll be back. Oh, my computer just shut off.
Do we need anything before that? Did we need anything specific from the council to move forward on that?
No, I think you've given us sufficient direction to move forward as
long as everyone's okay with moving forward, that's where.
Okay, all right, we'll be back in 10 minutes, 10:26. County Punta Gorda Metropolitan Planning Organization Project Prioritization.
Good morning. Austin, Urban Design. So every year the Metropolitan Planning Organization requests projects from the member governments for federal and state transportation funding. So just a little bit of 101 on that. The funding sources that we're talking about are federal and state transportation dollars, the responsible state agencies, the Florida Department of Transportation, and the local process is governed by the Charlotte County Punta Gorda Metropolitan Planning Organization. That policy guidance is federal transportation funding acts. The state level is the Florida Transportation Plan, and at the local level, it's the Long Range Transportation Plan, again, done by the MPO. There is a 5-year budget, which is the Transportation Improvement Program, and projects that go on that budget are at the request of MPO member governments. So the current draft of the Transportation Improvement Program, again, it's 5-year budget, it's updated annually, and those projects that are on there are based on what's provided by the MPO member governments and as prioritized by the MPO board. So the city has been quite successful over the last almost 20 years in getting funding through this program for various projects, landscaping on 41 and a couple on 17 early in the period. And then most recently, most of the projects have been related to the Punta Gorda Pathways system. All of those projects listed there received some or all of their funding through the federal allocations. So previous city councils have requested projects that are listed on the screen here. Harbor Walk US 41 Bridge Approach Lighting, Harbor Walk US 41 Southbound Bridge ADA Ramp, Complete Street Project Cooper Street Improvements, Complete Street Project US 17 Improvements, and US 41 Path Bridge South Alligator Creek. In the current draft of the Transportation Improvement Program, and there is a more current draft of this that has been released since this presentation was put together. The projects that are listed on the screen were funded. And so I just want to go through those one by one, and city staff will be looking for direction from City Council regarding whether or not we want to continue to support these projects. These, again, are projects that had been previously requested by the city. Pulling our support from those projects would likely mean that those projects would go away from the program. Funding wouldn't necessarily go back to any projects within our area. They would go back to FDOT District 1, which covers 12 counties. So whatever project needed funding in that program year would be where that funding would go. So the first project that I want to talk about is Harbor Walk US 41 southbound bridge ramp. This is an ADA connection between the Harbor Walk and the US 41 sidewalk, where there's currently a staircase. So it was identified as an ADA compliance concern that needed to be addressed. The city was bringing that to the attention of FDOT, and FDOT has identified it as a project for funding of engineering design in fiscal year 2024, which begins in July, and for construction in fiscal year 2026. Because this is on the state highway system, this will be an FDOT-led project. This project may, at the choosing of council, require a local funding agreement for any decorative upgrades that we would desire to keep that project consistent with the visual look of the existing downtown infrastructure, our Harbor Walk infrastructure. So again, for this project, just looking for yes, we continue to support it, or no, we don't.
Where are the funds coming from?
So all of the funds that are currently on here are from federal transportation dollars.
Melissa?
So the funding that you are showing there are from federal?
Yes, yes.
So do we have a cost of what this project would be in total?
So this project, because it is an FDOT-led project, if it costs more than the funds that are currently allocated to it, they would be responsible for identifying those funds and putting it together. The city had, in the current capital improvement program, identified this as a project, and there were previous years where funding had been allocated to it for design. So there may be the opportunity for funding those decorative improvements if council chose to go down that road at some point in the future. However, this project, because of the ADA compliance concerns, is most likely to be completed regardless.
Right, I do think it needs to be done. I guess my question, what I'm confused about is, we have some funding, but at the end of the day, what is the city going to have to pay for in this case?
If the city were to pay for anything on this particular project, it would be for the difference between what is FDOT standard, so, bare aluminum rails and, basic street lighting or pathway lighting, the difference between that cost and the cost of using the city decorative standard like the...
And that's what I'm looking for. Do we have that?
No, not yet, because this project has not been designed. We would know that at some point during the engineering design process, and then we would see a local funding agreement proposal. Again, if City Council is choosing to support this project.
So just to summarize, if we, as a council, support this, it would move forward. However, we're not necessarily allocating any dollars yet. We're just saying we support.
Correct.
Thank you. That was
yes. Sorry.
So this project was put on the back burner for a couple of years, and it's come back to the surface because not only do we necessarily need it as part of our ADA transition, our MPO director is in a wheelchair, and he has personally been out to the site and taken photos and shared those with FDOT, and FDOT put it back on the project list because of the importance of how we need to do it sooner than later. It's got to happen. I mean, we've got to do it. But it is FDOT dollars, as I understood it. I just wanted that on the record. And when you describe the rest of these projects, I'd like you to tell us whose dollars they are and where they're coming from, please.
Of course. Of course.
I believe there was some redesign that made this more cost-effective also, but no city dollars, unless
Yes.
you want, just like the funding agreement you'll discuss subsequent to this, there's decorative things that you can upgrade and pay for, but if you don't, it still moves forward.
Right.
Doesn't have to have city dollars.
Correct.
I personally support this. If you need.
Anyone else comment? Are we all in agreement and consensus?
Okay.
Okay.
Excellent. Thank you very much. So the next project, and this is a big one, is Complete Street, Cooper Street improvements. So this is part of the Punta Gorda Pathways system as originally envisioned. This project runs from Airport Road in the south down by the Verandas property by the public housing, or by the Punta Gorda Housing Authority, and runs north to the hospital area and would connect with Harbor Walk there at the eastern end. So this project is really intended to be a shared use path with pathway lighting and some limited landscaping. The funding that's in the Transportation Improvement Program is in fiscal year 2026, $308,000 for engineering design, and then in 2028, $2.9 million for construction. As this project is off of the state highway system, this would need to be a city-led project, or what they call a LAP project, a local area agency program project. So there would be some level of staff involvement in the procurement and process, as well as managing the engineering, design, and construction projects. So there's definitely the need for local funds for certain costs associated with this project.
Is this something we can use 1% dollars for?
Yes, yes. All Punta Gorda Pathways projects were on the 1% sales tax.
It's based on the timing. It could be incorporated into the next cycle.
Yes, indeed.
Anyone else have questions?
When you say that there's going to be some local costs, I mean, can you give us an idea? I mean, we're talking about $3.5 million roughly total. You know, are we going to be on the hook for 10%, 50%, 75%?
It's not percentage based, but in past experience with past projects, yes, it has been roughly 10% of the total project costs that the city has had to come up with in terms of cash and staff time. So there's staff time associated.
So that's a reasonable return on our investment then? Okay. That's what I was trying to get at.
Yeah. Definitely a reasonable term.
Okay, consensus? It's a go?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. So this next project, which I understand is contentious and the funding may not actually be there now in the current draft, is Complete Street project on US 17. And this was for Marion and Olympia Avenue from US 41 to Cooper Street. This project was intended as a planning study, including public input and technical analysis to explore options for enhancing roadway safety. The funding that was identified was in fiscal year 2028 for $291,000. Again, this is on the FDOT highway system, so it would have been a project led by the state agency, not by the city. There was no funding for engineering, design, or construction because this project is intended to figure out if there are even any projects which could be fundable and would be desired by the city. So this project has been requested by the city previously, and actually there's an unfunded capital improvements program sheet on this in our current budget, so that's why this is continued to...
Okay, I have to comment on this one, and you know I'm going to comment on this. This is really one of my pet peeves. We do not want a lane diet at all on US 17. I don't know any previous city councils that ever approved that concept. That is one of our two primary evacuation routes, ingress and egress in and out of the city, with Sunseeker coming on board and any possible redevelopment of any properties within our city limits. That is going to be the primary ingress and egress route. We cannot have lanes taken out of service just to make things pretty and make bike lanes. I'm sorry, I will never support that, ever. And we have told FDOT at least a dozen times since Greg's been on board. We both have conversations with FDOT. You know, I sit on the MPO board, and I've been very vocal about this. We absolutely do not want that project done, and it needs to come off the project list entirely. We've sent letters to FDOT backing that statement up. I will never, ever, ever support that idea.
Agreed.
And if they want to put pretty trees on the sides of the road or park benches, that's their prerogative, but that is their road and it's not ours. However, within our city limits, I absolutely will never support a lane diet.
Mayor, I totally agree with you 1,000%, but Mitchell, when are they going to repave Olympia? That road's terrible.
It's in the works.
Yes, there is actually a roadway resurfacing project. I have a slide about that at the end of the presentation, just for informational purposes.
I don't want to see any city dollars spent on anything on 17 at this point, basically. That's my position on it. I don't know how you all feel, but...
I tend to agree, and I definitely agree that no matter where we're at in the city or just outside, I don't want to see any lanes taken away. With all the expansion we're doing around, the last thing we need is for lanes to be taken away. It just doesn't make sense.
And we've asked FDOT to, originally they had said they were going to resurface 17 from Cooper to the freeway. However, Mr. Constance and I both have supported the fact that that needs to be expanded all the way to 41, because that whole stretch between 41 and Cooper Street is a hot mess. And somebody's going to lose the bottom of their car on one of those little lumps. I mean, I was just on it the other day. It's bad. It's in a really bad condition. And I get complaints all the times from residents. It's got to be repaved. And it is in the resurfacing program, but it's a few years down the road, unfortunately. Okay, so we say no to this one, is that correct?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. We'll make sure to remove it.
And please make sure they take it off the project list if they haven't already done it. But Greg has sent them a letter. We've talked to them dozens of times about this.
Okay. We'll be sure to remove it from the capital improvement program as well. So the final project that has been identified for funding is the US 41 Path Bridge at the South Fork of Alligator Creek. Now, this project was previously requested by the city a few years ago after the completion of the North Fork bridge. It was removed from the city's CIP program, and the city has no longer been requesting the project. However, that project has been identified for engineering design funding in fiscal year 2025 with no funding for construction because lack of city support. So we just want final confirmation that the city is no longer interested in pursuing this project.
If I may. Again, no. We're still catching flack about the other bridge that cost over $1 million, which was ludicrously, ridiculously expensive and served no useful purpose for the residents of City of Punta Gorda. I see very, very little amount of traffic being using that whole path down the side of 41. This, in my opinion, is a waste of taxpayer dollars, and I would not support it. Anyone else?
I do not support this either, but I am just curiosity. Was it identified because of a safety issue? Is it because they kind of have to go, like the old one, you kind of had to go around on your bike and then get back on?
Yeah, it is identified as a safety issue because currently the path extends on both sides of Alligator Creek, and technically the path ends before it gets to the bridge. If people are proceeding by bicycle south on that route, they are technically in violation of the law unless they dismount their bike and walk across the bridge there. So
I was just
that is a
curious,
safety
but
concern.
I say no as well.
I saw somebody driving a golf cart down that path last week, 2 weeks ago, which is ridiculous. It's not a golf cart path. Golf carts are not supposed to even be on 41. I don't see this as a useful expenditure of our money. Anyone else disagree?
Agree.
Okay, that's a no.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So again, as I mentioned previously, there are 3 major roadway resurfacing projects in the Transportation Improvement Program. You have the US 41 northbound project from William Street to the Peace River Bridge, which is funded for construction in fiscal year 2024. And then at the bottom in orange there, the US 17 project from US 41 southbound to Beaumont Road. That project is also funded for construction in FY 2024. So those 2 roadway resurfacing projects will be occurring simultaneously in fiscal year 2024, which will be later in that, will be in that calendar year, not immediately this year.
Mitchell, do we know if the 41 project, resurfacing project, if they're going to come back and make all the lanes even? They've resurfaced the primary 2 lanes on either side of the road, and they've started to do the median changes that they're doing, but they don't line up. They're all uneven.
Yeah, we're in that project to the south of the city, the US 41 resurfacing project from Payne Street to Rio Villa. That project is in the middle of the construction process, so they're going to be uneven lanes until they get done with all of the median adjustments, and then they'll do final resurfacing of the roadway, restriping, and finish up the project. So it's going to be like that at least through the summer, I would imagine.
Okay, and I'd like to bring up one other thing while we're on this subject. I spoke to a gentleman that I work with at FDOT last week, and I commented that the construction that is being done on 41 has completely put our city in gridlock, because they're doing it all the time during the middle of broad daylight when thousands of contractors and cars, traffic are trying to go up and down 41, and they had traffic backed up from Jones Loop Road to Airport Road last week. And that is absolutely unacceptable in the main part of a business day. I will write a letter with everybody's support. I will write a letter to FDOT and explain the situation and ask that they consider doing some of this construction in off hours, because it just really puts the whole city into a total meltdown gridlock. And then that day there was an accident in front of Toll's Plaza. A guy had to be air flighted because he had head trauma. A Cadillac was destroyed. There was nothing left of the front of the car all the way up to the steering wheel. At the same time, there was an accident on the northbound bridge. At the same time, there was a car that flipped over on Florida Street. Our entire city was just shut down. And people were going crazy. It was just, everybody was cutting in and out of parking lots and doing U-turns, and it was ridiculous. So I would really like to see if everybody supports a letter. I will write FDOT a letter and ask if there's consideration for using some of the off-hour, because they do have highway generators, they can work at night. So, yeah.
And I agree, but I would also wonder if there's some way that FDOT could encourage people to merge properly at these construction sites. Many states, I'll say many states, have a law that's called the zipper law. And the proper way to merge is to go both lanes all the way up and then merge one after the other. What you have is people exacerbating the problem because they're going to be traffic cops and they're going to merge early and then cut over so nobody can get up, and you've got a half a mile of open lane. The problem is caused a lot by people not understanding how the proper way to merge. And if you talk to any traffic engineer, they're going to tell you that. And in some states, it's actually a law. I don't think it's a law in Florida, but still it's the proper way to do it. And I think with signage or something, they could encourage the proper way to do that.
Okay. Anyway, so we're going to write a letter to FDOT according to what we just talked about. Okay, and 17, now you're saying that the actual resurfacing will happen in 2024?
Yes, so according to the project manager for the design portion of these two projects, that those two projects are supposed to go together in construction. So the US 17 design project is playing catch up with the US 41 northbound project, which is nearing final completion.
That's good, because it was in 25 and 26 before.
Yes.
Okay.
So that's all I have for that item. Thank you.
I have a question. Three things, they all involve Aquiesta. The first two I know the answer to, but I'd like an answer from you to go on record, because you hear a lot about Aquiesta and Bal Harbor and the need for a traffic light there. You also hear a lot about widening Aquiesta all the way from Bal Harbor to 41 to add a turn lane so people can get around, everybody else that's trying to make turns and stop to do their lawns and whatever else. So again, I know the answer to this, but I want to hear from you. Is that something that we can get FDOT funding?
So the current configuration of Aquiesta is actually a project that has a long history with the Metropolitan Planning Organization in Charlotte County and goes all the way back to the beginning. That project, as originally intended, was to be a 4-lane road widening project because of the anticipated travel demand and the needs in terms of right-of-way, because it is a very narrow right-of-way. That project was cut down and cut down and cut down, and eventually we just got repaving the 2-lane road, raising the roadway elevation so it wouldn't flood anymore, and getting a new bridge that was over the canal, the Venice Canal there, to make that roadway safer and more sustainable as a hurricane evacuation route. In terms of studying the roadway to see what kind of traffic operation improvements can be made, that is something that the city has identified as a need in its 2019 transportation build-out study. In that study, we really looked long and hard at the current travel demand and the anticipated growth based on the development rights that are available that are left in Punta Gorda Isles, and it was determined that intersection improvements at 41 and at Bal Harbor would be the place to go to look for the greatest benefit for the least cost.
41 in Bal Harbor or 41 Aquiesta?
At 41 and at Bal
okay,
Harbor, both intersections at either end. So that is something that we can certainly advance in our planning. As far as the fundability, the 41 intersection is definitely something we could pursue federal funding for. Bal Harbor, it's highly unlikely given the current scenarios, but it is definitely something we can explore with MPO staff and FDOT staff to see how that could be structured so that we could get potential funding for it through the state or federal processes.
In 41, one of the big things was the right turn, right there where the wall is, and that's difficult, but we maintain all the rest.
Well,
that answers my third Aquiesta, because that was going to be the third one, and I knew that there was funding for that, but I didn't think there was for the other widening or a light.
The other thing is, back in 2016, right after I got elected, when the developer on Aquiesta wanted to develop the 106-acre parcel, the city asked that they contribute a bike lane on the south side of Aquiesta from Bal Harbor to their project, and then through their project and cutting out onto Rio Villa, and also to put a turn lane in front of their facility when it was built, and also to put a turn lane at 41 and Bal Harbor, 41 and Aquiesta, excuse me. And the developer chose to not accept that, which is why it got denied by the city at that time. So There is no money. I mean, the county cut back all the funding to widen the road. They ended up, as Mitchell said, they just raised the road up a little bit and made it a little bit more sustainable for flooding, and also put a new bridge in, which you want to talk about traffic backups. Holy moly. When Kia Star was completely shut down for several months while they put that bridge in, it was a total madhouse, and everybody had to divert through Charlotte Park to get out, to go down what would have been a Kia Star. It was an absolute disaster. So at this point, it would cost millions and millions of dollars to widen that road, unfortunately.
Even though there is no funding, it is going to be an issue, because every time, if you get the mail truck that's delivering and stops, then people can't get around them. If you got somebody having their lawn done or their pool done and somebody's blocking a lane, it's a real problem. And the answer, even though it's millions and millions, is a center turn lane so people could get around, or at least make a turn and get off.
Yeah. I totally agree with you, but unfortunately. And they could have done it too when there was no development on the south side of a Kia Star, because there was virtually no construction even happening on the south side of the road from Bell Harbor almost all the way through to 41, and now it's almost completely developed, so.
It's one of the big issues right away.
Yeah.
Yeah. Right away.
Okay. Anybody else have any other questions before we move on? Okay, thank you. Oh, I'm sorry. So the next agenda item is proposed local funding agreement items, US 41 northbound William Street to Peace River Bridge.
Again, for the record, Mitchell Austin, Urban Design. So this is a presentation of proposed local funding agreement for upgrade items for this roadway resurfacing project. So just to give you a brief project status here, this project is from William Street, just south of downtown, to the Peace River Bridge on the northbound side of US 41, which is Tamiami Trail. This is a three-part project. There was a planning study which was completed a couple of years ago, and engineering design, which is anticipated to be complete later this calendar year, and construction, which is funded in next fiscal year in 2024. So this project has some major components beyond just resurfacing the roadway itself. There's intersection improvements with a roundabout at Carmelita Street at the gateway to the downtown, and a new traffic signal at Retta Esplanade. There are also some streetlight modifications which are proposed, again, to accommodate the roundabout at Carmelita Street and at the bridge approach. In addition, there are pedestrian facility changes, modifications, including crosswalk upgrades, pedestrian actuated signal or hawk beacon at a location, and sidewalk upgrades, and some ADA compliance issues will be addressed. So the proposed project has several upgrade items based on the planning study which City Council participated in. And those are decorative upgrades to traffic signal poles, decorative upgrades to street lights, to the city standard street light for the downtown area, and then additionally a shared use pathway connection from Retta Esplanade to the Harbor Walk. So these items are really presented as a menu of options. City Council can choose to accept all of them and identify appropriate funding sources for them, or some of them, or none of them. This is really at your discretion. So I can go through these one by one, and you guys can give us consensus at that time, or we can do it at the end. It's entirely up to you how you want to handle that.
I'd like to just officially state, after speaking with my contact at FDOT last week, to be clear on this, the decorative things are in addition to what FDOT would pay for. So if we want any of the decorative things, it comes out of the city's coffers. If we just go with what FDOT would normally standardly put in, then they're paying for it.
Correct.
It's a very big difference in the bottom line of this whole thing, so.
So the number that's on the screen would be our cost?
Correct.
So what I mean, I'm okay going through the whole thing and looking at it at the end, but I'd also like to know where the money is coming, if we have identified the funding source, because I think it's $615,000 in total.
Yeah.
So as we go through or at the end, I'd like to know where it's coming from.
If you want to just say a few words.
Yeah,
sure. There are several things just as a visual before Kristen gets into the money. And if, for example, Carmelita, if you're crossing over Cooper or Taylor, between the two, and you're coming from the park, Carmelita Park, you can see there's tall semi-decorative lightings in front of the school, but once you cross over and get into the city portion, you can see that there's more closely spaced, shorter decorative lighting. So that's the kind, I believe, of lighting we're talking about. Is definitely substantial difference in the look as opposed to the higher intensity lighting that would cover, similar areas. These are shorter, more closely spaced street lighting, so to speak, that are more our standard. So that's the difference in a lot of this we're looking at, especially when we talk about the decorative light poles north of Retta and the number of them that's required to do that. So.
Kristen Simeon, sorry.
I'm sorry. I was just going to make a comment because this is something that I just learned, and, just because people are watching and kind of learning that, again, yes, whatever FDOT has their standard different things that they would put in, and then, again, if we want to make it look like the rest of the city looks, that's a big decision to make, because if you, in one aspect, if you just allow FDOT to put what their standard, let's just say, a light signal is, you may be driving through the city and it may look all consistent, and then you get to one spot where if FDOT is just put in their standard kind of not as pretty, let's put it, it's going to change the look of what the city of Punta Gorda is. And that's something I wasn't aware of until we kind of had this conversation. So just as a matter of public record, that's why we're going through this, because we can just allow FDOT to put in all their standard items and life goes on. But in order to make our city decorative in the way that we want to see it, personally, I think it's important to really go through this and make sure that, it's standard throughout the city of how we want it to look.
I agree, and that's the similar conversation we had about the brick intersections. If you're going to do it in one, you kind of have to do it consistently, otherwise you have a hodgepodge look, and that's worse, much worse.
Go ahead, I'm sorry.
Kristen Simeon, Finance Director. So as this project came up, we did start looking for some funding sources. One project that is on the 1% sales tax list was the Bridge Approach Lighting Project, and part of these items are for that, so that would be $120,000. And then just from your discussion on the last agenda item, we did have a project for the US 17 Complete Street from the 1% sales tax, and $500,000 had been funded in a future year, so those $500,000 could be used towards this project. We could move it up and then just use additional funds that are received in a future year for something else.
So I constantly hear that we're going to fund stuff with 1% sales tax. When is that going to run out? Or when are we going to go to 2% sales tax? I mean, at some point, we can't fund everything. There's got, and I'm sure you're keeping track of it, but you constantly hear 1%, 1%, 1%. Well, at some point, it's going to be more than that.
So for infrastructure projects, we have been using the 1% sales tax as long as it is renewed. So again, this particular sales tax ends in fiscal year 27 so we aren't budgeting for anything past fiscal year 27 at this point.
26.
26, but it's the fiscal year 27. It ends December 31st, 2026. So we get about a quarter of our revenue in that fiscal year. So for fiscal year for fiscal year beyond, if someone's suggesting projects for that, we consider it unfunded at this time because that would be voted by the voters.
Right.
Several years ago, we used to fund police vehicles and fire vehicles from the 1% sales tax, and we made it a point to move that out because, again, we don't know when it would not be extended.
And that's a very good question, because one of the concerns we've had, I mean, we're funding everything now with the 1%, including the anticipated increase in 1% that we have up until the election in 26, which is our fiscal 27. So in all our infrastructure planning, if that is not passed, we have not relied on local tax dollars or other sources of funds to upgrade and improve those kind of infrastructure needs, and that could be a big problem for us in the future if indeed something happened to the 1%. So
can you please put together a total updated package on the 1% funds for next council meeting and have a breakdown of what the total amount was that we predicted we were going to have, where we stand so far in the 6-year cycle, and what projects have been funded and or will be funded?
And could that be for the May 17th meeting? Because it would not be able to have it for the agenda packet that goes out tomorrow.
We can't have it for next week?
They want to have it ready by then.
Yeah, it was part of our plan as a...
Okay.
Okay.
But within that, I'd like to also see things like, for instance, one of the things, we have an overrun on the City Hall expansion. Well, we haven't actually spent it yet and approved that yet, but we're counting on that $1 million maybe, to come out at 1%. So you got to kind of hold that aside. So I'd like to see not just what we've actually spent and committed, but all these projects we say, well, we could take it from here, we could take it. At some point there's going to be opportunity costs, and we're going to have to say, well, we can't do that because there's no more, unless we decide we're going to take this one out and not even consider it. So I'd like to see it beyond just committed but including what we're thinking about.
Correct.
Actually, the last one that we presented actually had the 10.8 for City Hall, the different options when they were originally chosen, where we thought the money would come from. We identified what the Tier 2 unfunded at the time would then be able to be funded with the 1%. So we have all that information, and we continue to track that, and by we, I mean her. But what we would do is put all that together again back into that succinct presentation so that it could come back in, and you could see, again, the same thing that we had basically done before.
We also still have projects that aren't finished from the previous 1% cycle, the Virginia Avenue improvements. I mean, are we going to ever do that?
It's in the works.
Yeah, if they don't keep changing owners for the right-of-ways and such.
Yeah. I mean, that whole thing just gets very convoluted because you've got different tax cycles that all have to pay for different funding projects. Okay.
Correct. And we are getting the updated CIP sheets from all the departments, and that's why we were scheduling that for May 17th to go over all the construction as well as, where we're at with the 1%, and we'll present it as where we were at for this past budget and where we're going with the new budget year.
Okay.
That ties in nicely with the budget presentations that were upcoming, because that's coming quickly.
Okay, so get back to the decorative light poles, $600 and whatever $1,000.
So one more thing before that. When you said the complete streets that was budgeted for $500,000, would you just detail what that project was?
Sure.
And why we're not using it now?
Yep. So I just pulled it out of the budget book. So that was to design the complete streets along East Marion Avenue from Cooper Street to Cross Street, US 41 northbound, and along East Olympia Avenue between Cooper Street to Cross Street, US 41 northbound. The improvements were to include sidewalks, street lighting, bicycle lanes, intersection treatments, and enhanced crosswalks.
And that project is off the list, so the $500,000 now becomes available for something else.
Correct.
Oh, you can put your pretty light poles up.
Thank you, Kristen. So the first item here is decorative traffic signal poles, and these are at 3 intersections at Taylor Street, Retta Esplanade, and Charlotte Avenue, where that pedestrian hybrid beacon or pedestrian actuated beacon would be located. So this is, instead of a bare metal pole, this is black poles with a decorative surround at the bottom, which matches our existing decorative streetlight features as seen here in the photo. FDOT promises that the street name signs will actually be there and not damaged by Hurricane Ian, as this photo is. The total cost of that upgrade, again, just the upgrade, is $87,000. The second item is the decorative street lights at the Carmelita Street roundabout. This would be 5 light poles, which would exactly match the existing city standard. This is the location of the gateway, yes, this is the location of the gateway sign into downtown, and the projected cost of this is $38,000.
And those decorative light poles, we didn't have a picture of those, but the shorter decorative top.
If I can get to that. I don't know if I can. In this slide, beside the traffic signal pole, there is a decorative street pole, although that has 2 heads and ours is just 1. So similar to that.
There's a lot of them on Carmelita.
Yeah. The next item is, again, decorative street lights. This one is the most substantial in terms of cost, and difference is from Retta Esplanade to the Peace River Bridge. So this is the bridge approach decorative lighting. There would be 20 decorative street light poles matching the existing city standard. Again, this is a CIP project in the current budget for, if I remember correctly, $120,000 has already been identified for this. This is a complete replacement. The city's decorative street lights do better light the sidewalks that are available in this area, and because of the location of the hotels, the connections to Harbor Walk, as well as the connection back to the businesses on Marion Avenue, this is a fairly well-traveled path for people walking in and around the downtown area. So that is one of the reasons that previous city councils had identified it as an important project. The final piece of the puzzle would be a shared use path, and this would stretch from Retta Esplanade, the traffic signal there, north to the connection to Harbor Walk right there at the boat ramp. This project is $92,000 approximately to fund that segment. So in total, the 4 items are detailed here. The total cost would be just over $612,000 if City Council chose to execute all of those items. What we're looking for today is direction on which, if any, of these items City Council wishes to fund. Based on that, we'll go to FDOT staff and request that they prepare local funding agreements. On the FDOT end, they will be finalizing the project engineering to include or exclude those items, and then prepare that local funding agreement for future council consideration. That's where we'll have the final dollar amounts, which the dollar amounts here are pretty good. The last time around that we did this, the initial amounts were actually higher than the final amounts. I can't guarantee that again, but the FDOT does a really good job of preparing these numbers.
Comments?
I mean, I personally think in order to keep consistency with the way our city looks, that we, need to go ahead and spend this money. I think we would regret it if we didn't do it all together, because I think you'd have that lapse of consistency within the city.
Yeah, I agree, Mayor. I think Kristen just found $500,000 for us. We could slide that in, that would make it a much better project. I like the idea.
Using the money that wasn't used for 17?
Yep.
Mitchell, from Olympia to Carmelita, what amount of lights currently existing are the black decorative lights versus FDOT lights? Any idea?
So the city decorative lights extend to the Virginia Avenue intersection. Between Virginia Avenue and going south, there are no decorative poles. Again, as the city manager has stated, we do have the city decorative standard on Carmelita as the gateway into the school area.
So this would extend that difference from Virginia to Carmelita?
This would only be at the intersection, at the actual gateway.
So we're still going to have inconsistency in
There
between?
would still be that inconsistency, but that was, again, several more hundreds of thousands of dollars because of the multiple blocks and crossings, so...
Then I feel differently about it, because if it was going to be consistently the same all the way northbound and southbound, it would be one thing, but if it's not, then I don't see the need to spend $600,000. It's my opinion.
Well, the only... So the decorative signal poles and the light poles north of Red Esplanade and the shared use path are all in that area of consistency. The signal poles at Carmelita at the roundabout would be the only area, and again, that is at that gateway sign, so that is gateway to downtown right in front of Chase Bank and Cross Trails.
So
Can we use that $500,000 toward this if we decide to do that?
That's 1%.
We can. What does everybody think?
I mean, I agree with Melissa that you got to be consistent and you got to start somewhere, because this is a much bigger decision, as you said, than just this $600,000, because you're either going to go this way or that way. And this in and of itself isn't going to make us consistent anywhere, but it's going to point the direction for the future. So then every future decision is pretty much already made, because you're going this way or you're going to go that way. So, I mean, if we have the funding for it, and we are going into this eyes open, that we're making a decision we're going to pony up for this every time we have an opportunity, and eventually, long after I'm gone, you'll have consistency. But you got to start somewhere.
Donna?
I really do agree, because I think our lighting, where we have it in this form, is part of the charm. And, given the things that we would like to see happen downtown, which are not happening for probably a long time, I'd at least like to get something going with the lighting. I think it would be, I understand it's expensive, but I think it's needed.
Does everybody feel that if we use that $500,000 that's not going to be used on 17 toward this, that we can make it happen and leave the city staff up to finding the other 25% of it, or whatever has to be found?
Yep. Still have the bridge approach lighting project also.
So the bridge approach lighting was $120,000, so that would get you where you need to go.
In addition to the 612?
Mm-hmm. The 120 plus the 500.
Oh.
We would have 620 right now.
Oh, okay, so then we have the money.
Yes.
Okay.
It's a new guaranteed maximum cost.
Okay, yeah. Not to exceed. Do we have a consensus to do that?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Can I ask one more question then also?
I don't know, can you?
If you allow. Yes, I can, but may I?
Yes.
The decorative enhancements, any annual operating impact agreements that we would have to?
Yeah, so the local funding agreement would also state what our responsibilities were in terms of maintenance. So the city actually maintains all the street lighting in the city. We get certain level of reimbursement from the state. The high mast lighting, so the really tall poles, the non-decorative city poles, those the city has a contract with the county to maintain those, because we don't have the equipment or staffing to do it ourselves. So we're proposing to remove some of those as part of this project and return it to the city standard pole, which we maintain internally. So there may be a neutral or only a minor increase in operating costs for the city regarding this changes.
Okay. Do you want a formal motion on this, or is consensus satisfactory?
This is an agreement, local funding agreement, but if we have consensus to move forward, the agreement itself has to come back.
Okay.
Correct.
All right. So we have consensus to move forward on all of this?
Excellent.
Using the money as stated?
Excellent. Thank you.
Okay. Is that it?
That's it for that one.
Okay. All right, very good. We'll move on. Thank you, Mitchell. And thank you, Kristen. So the next item is project update presentation and agreement award to Christel Construction of Fort Myers for construction manager at risk services for the A.C. Freeman House historic restoration.
Okay. So again, for the record, Mitchell Austin, Urban Design. I'm just going to start off with a brief project update for council here, and then turn it over to our procurement manager, Ann Heinen. So the A.C. Freeman House rehabilitation is really a multi-phase project. It began back in 2020 with a comprehensive building evaluation and report. Based on that report, we needed to do architectural design services, and council directed staff to pursue a state grant. The city was awarded that grant, and we are in the process of maintaining compliance with that award for $497,000 for construction, the actual rehabilitation of the building. The structure was previously listed on the National Register, and it was determined that its listing had lapsed based on the fact that it had been relocated since its original listing. So we needed to go in and get it relisted on the National Register of Historic Places, and that application was approved by the state of, or recommended by the state of Florida and forwarded to the U.S. Department of Interior for their action, which is still pending. As this project is currently structured, completion could occur in 2024. So at present, with the architectural design, we completed existing conditions drawings back in 2021 and completed 60% plans in 2022. Based on where we were at in the grant process and trying to figure out if we were going to receive that grant, the project was paused, and it's been restarted, and we're nearing completion of the 90% plans. It says April 2023, and hopefully that will actually come to pass. We're at the end of the month now. We also had some stormwater management permitting that needs to be accomplished moving into the future, and then we anticipate final construction documents in August of this year. So today, the city is proposing that this project be delivered through a construction manager at risk contract. And the proposal here is for pre-construction services with 2 tasks, a 90% budget estimate, and then that guaranteed maximum price. So much as you saw previously with the City Hall project, you would get that firm budget estimate, detailed costs, lists of qualifications and assumptions based on that cost, and enumeration of what documents they use to achieve that. So moving forward, we would anticipate that we would have 90% design plans and the cost estimate from the construction manager at risk in June of this year, with construction plans in August and a guaranteed maximum price in September of this year. And those dates should remind us of the City Hall project because they are in alignment now.
Questions? Melissa?
Not really a question, just a statement. I just want to go on record by saying that whatever we do with the Freeman House, there has got to be built into it a long-term goal for maintenance. We can't move forward with this project unless we have a definitive maintenance plan. We can't allow this to get into the state that it was before. And I just wanted to make sure that that is, to me, the most important part of this project.
Totally agree. Totally agree. We let it get way too bad for too long. And let's hope that we can have the historic groups getting together, come up with some kind of a plan for us too. Donna, you're still involved with that group?
Yes, I am.
Okay.
So just to clarify two things. One is we got the grant for $497,000. So as it stands now at 60% plans, it's a $1.4 million project and we're fully funded at that level. Now that may change if at the 90% level or guaranteed price, but right now we're fully funded.
I would have to defer to the finance director for that answer.
Okay. Well, and then the other question, well, she's looking that up. The other question I have is, so what we're talking about today is approving $30,000 for CMAR to go ahead and do the 90% plan. So that's the decision we're making today. Okay.
Good morning, Ann Heinen, Procurement. To address your question regarding the budget, currently we have budgeted for the project $1.4 million. Out of that, out of the total funds, the grant funds are $497,900. City funds, which is the 1% sales tax, is funded $872,000. We received $32,000 from insurance, so that comprises the $1.4 million. Today we are looking for approval to move forward with the CMAR contract. The expenses so far to date for the architectural design have been encumbered $136,072, and then the CMAR advertising of $88,66. So that leaves a remaining funds for the CMAR project for Phase 1 and Phase 2. Phase 1 design is $27,270, which would leave $1,238,469.34 for construction of the project.
Okay, and just thank you. And so just so I understand where we are then, as far as the direction we've given them in the past, is that we're going to restore it to historically correct specifications, but also make it usable, which means ADA compliant, so then we can have some revenue generation from their events and that type of thing. Is that, so that's where we're at right now? Okay.
And that's what the 60% plan showed. That's correct. Yeah.
Also, if I can just interject, one of the things that the historic groups are doing is meeting with a firm, and I won't get the name right, but they're based in Fort Myers, who they operate some historic properties now, to get sort of an idea of what can an operational plan look like going forward. So, because I don't think anybody at the city thinks that's the business we're in, but I think if we get some expertise, then we can see what we can do with it, which would probably drive the decision to what degree you finish the inside.
Good. Great. Are we confident that the $872,000 and 1% funds are there, that we have those available to use?
Yes.
Kristen Simeone, Finance Director. Yes, we currently had put that into the budget right at the end of the budget season last year, because again, we heard we were getting the grant and we would have to fund it. I know there was talk at time to maybe try and find some fundraising efforts as well, but I'm not sure if that.
So we, at this point, would not need that. We would. Excuse me. Okay, great. Thank you.
Correct.
Any other questions?
And again, part of the grant funding is to put an ADA accessible bathroom in the facility for its use.
And don't we have a timeline we have to use that money, that grant funding?
We do.
And what is that?
Do you remember what it is? June, is it June 2024?
Of this year?
Is that correct? No, it's June 2024.
Okay, so we're good with that. Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
So again, along the grant process, the granting agency has certain items that need to be approved during the the course of moving the project forward. Procurement issued the request for qualification, and the granting agency had to approve our document prior to putting it out on the street. That did occur, and we released the solicitation. The solicitation was sent to over 800 vendors, 12 viewed it, and we received only one response. Because state statute does dictate that we discuss the project with at least 3 vendors, we went to the granting agency. We relayed to them what our procurement process had been, and they did give us approval to move forward with the one response. They approved our procurement process. So after that was completed, we did move forward with the evaluation committee to review the one response, and the evaluation committee did determine that the single response was qualified to successfully meet the objectives of the solicitation and qualified to perform the work. So they issued the approval for procurement to move forward to negotiations for phase 1, which is the design phase. We did have to provide our contract to the granting agency. They have given us approval to move forward with the contract, contingent on city council approval. So the total lump sum for phase 1 pre-construction services, again, is $270. Phase 2 will commence only when the city accepts the GMP, which is the guaranteed maximum price, and will be delivered during the phase 1 services. So staff is suggesting approval of awarding the agreement to Christel Construction of Fort Myers, Florida, as the most qualified responsible bidder.
Okay, any questions for Ann?
Move to approve agreement award to Christel Construction.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve the agreement to Christel Construction as the most qualified and responsible bidder for the Freeman House restoration. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you. Okay. And the next item is the award of agreements to Marine Contracting Group, Inc. of Punta Gorda, Florida, R.J. Gorman Marine Construction, LLC of Panama City, Florida, and Ecological Construction Services, Inc., doing business as Economy Dock, Seawall and Dredge Company for seawall installation in 8 zones of the Punta Gorda Isles and Burnt Store Isles canal systems.
Again, Ann Heinen, procurement for the record. The funding for this project will be 75% FEMA funds, reimbursable funds, 12.5% from the state, and 12.5% from the canal maintenance funds. Staff did release a solicitation and invitation to bid for the seawall installation and repairs due to Hurricane Ian. The solicitation document identified 8 different work zones. 6 in PGI and 2 in BSI. We sent out the solicitation. We notified over 1,000 vendors. 12 viewed the solicitation, and the city received 5 responses. In considering the award recommendation, staff had to consider the lowest responsive bidder, their bonding capacity, then review their work capabilities and the proposed resources committed to each zone and award using the methodology for that evaluation and award. So in doing so, Marine Contracting was the lowest bidder. So to bring them to their maximum bonding capacity, staff would like to award 2 zones in PGI and 2 zones in BSI. So the total award to Marine Contracting Group will be $9,758,808.50. Next in line would be the second lowest would be R.J. Gorman Marine Construction. And staff had identified 3 zones in PGI for an estimated cost of $14,115,935.20. And then the remainder zone, which is one zone in PGI, would be Economy Dock, Seawall, and Dredge Company at $2,836,605. So we estimate the total project to be $26,711,348 for each contractor. Now, these are based on estimated quantities prior to FEMA doing their review of the project, so they can change. This is a unit price contract, so it will be based on the actual quantities upon finaling the project.
Mark?
So I have 3 questions.
Yes.
One was you mentioned the 75, 12.5, 12.5 funding. Is that, are we assuming that, or is that, do we have confirmation that we're going to get that same level of participation from FEMA and the state? Because that's what we got from Irma, right?
Correct, and that's general, and the finance director has been meeting with FEMA on a weekly basis, so they're working through that process of getting all of that.
So we're confident that, because right now the cash flow is on us, right? I mean, we're gonna, to get this ball rolling, the city is stepping up and we're gonna fund it, hoping that we're gonna get reimbursed.
Define confident.
Yeah. So, Kristen Simeone, again, Finance Director. In meeting with FEMA, they continuously remind us they're reimbursement only. So yes, it is on us to actually start the projects and request reimbursements.
And it's eligible cost.
It's eligible costs.
So that's where the argument comes in, what's eligible, what's not, and which we can get them to fund.
Now, they haven't obligated the funds yet. I mean, we've got our main contract, but again, until they do their inspections, which they tell us they're putting in, you know, for us to get someone out here to do our inspections, we are waiting for that to give us final quantities. With Hurricane Irma, it started as a 75% FEMA, 25% state, 12.5% state, and 12.5% for the Canal District. Depending on the level of the storm, that's when they make decisions to sometimes change that percentage. So for Hurricane Irma, it had gone up to 90% FEMA and 5% to the state and 5% to the Canal District, which is why we were able to reduce the amount we were projecting for that extra amount from the Canal Districts. So depending on this storm, at some point, they may increase it.
Okay, so thank you. My second question, and this is just for my own edification, so $26 million, how does that compare to Irma? And we have less wall during this time than we did during Irma, but I think the amount is close, right?
Correct. I believe just for the walls, I think it was about $22 million for Irma that we got reimbursed for. Costs have gone up since then substantially, so that's why you're probably seeing the increase. And this number that Ian is providing you, that is just the installation work. The city staff is producing the seawalls, so you also have the concrete costs that we're paying, the rebar, and all the materials that go into producing the seawalls as well.
Okay, thank you. And my third question, sorry. Last question is, so when you look at the bids, Gorman is getting the largest chunk of this, but I understand that they don't use a barge. So I'm curious as to how they plan to access the seawalls if they're not going to use a barge.
That's my question also.
Okay.
And there's been some additional discussion and clarification on that also,
Yes, absolutely.
because of that question itself.
Traditionally, in our maintenance program and in previous programs for Irma, it was always completed via the water side. So staff did have questions of R.J. Gorman for their methodology of providing the services by land. They do have the capability of providing the service by land or water. They have all the equipment necessary to do so, and they can perform the work either way.
And the bid, their bid is the same either way?
Correct.
Okay, because I was just concerned if they were, I had originally understood they were going to do it by land, and I'm thinking fortunately, I don't have any seawall down, but are they really going to lift seawall panels over my house? And are they going to drive their equipment over my landscaping?
Right.
So that's a non-starter. I mean, there's no way that, and I'm speaking for all those poor people that have seawalls that are down, nobody's lifting a seawall panel over my house or anybody else's house. So it's going to have to be by water, and as long as the bid doesn't change, if we're doing it by water, then I'm okay.
I totally agree with you. I would never support that.
Kathy Miller, Canal Maintenance Supervisor. So we have reached out to R.J. Gorman in an email, giving them all of our concerns, explaining to them the situation, and they have responded back with their preferred methodology would be by land, but they do have a barge, and they are capable of addressing the seawall replacement by water if need be. They're aware that they have to recover or replace anything that they damage. They are prepared to put out maintenance of traffic cones, from, bringing the material in from the roadway and stuff like that. So they are prepared, they do understand, they have visited the site, so they have reassured us that they are familiar with our area and they understand the situation.
The other thing is, of course, that when this has been specified ever, we don't do means and methods. We didn't say it has to be by water, and that's one of the issues.
We can make it a condition of approval, however.
Yes, I would make it. I mean,
but that's not the way it was bid, so that changes everything.
Well, but that's my question. So here's where I'm at, I guess. If they could do this for the amount that they bid by water, then we can go ahead and approve it. If they can't, then they're going to have to rebid, which is going to slow down the process. But then my question is, can we approve MCG and Economy and let them get going, and while we deal with Gorman? Because there's no way that people in Punta Gorda are going to allow seawall panels to be lifted over their house. It isn't going to happen. It wouldn't happen to my house. And I actually had a tractor go back after Ian to straighten up 3 of my palm trees. And I paid because I wanted the palm trees straightened, but they destroyed my landscaping trying to get between the houses with this tractor. So people are just not going to put up with that, even if they're going to say, well, don't worry, we'll fix it. No, it needs to be done by water. And even though we didn't ask for the bid that way, it needs to be done by water. And if they can do it for this price, then, I mean, is Gorman here? I saw a Gorman truck outside. Maybe we should hear from them, because
would you like to speak with
Mm-hmm.
that's where I'm at. I mean, it has to be by water, has to be.
Let's get it on the record.
One moment, please. R.J. Gorman in the audience. Would you guys like to come on up and introduce yourselves? Are you prepared to answer some questions?
Hi, I'm Dylan Koss with R.J. Gorman. I'm going to be the project manager on the job, and I'm up here to answer any questions. Primarily, our main focus was to, originally access everything from land due to the fast-paced nature of an emergency project, and assuming that the homeowners would like to get the seawall repaired. Understand this has been a process, right? So our intention was, if mutually agreeable with the homeowner, we would access from land, but we also have barges, cranes, excavators on barges. We have a whole marine fleet of equipment that was provided to, I believe, the procurement division. And all that stuff is exactly what all the other contractors have. I looked at the meeting minute agendas. We have all of the same equipment. So anything that they have, we also have. Now, the areas we were looking at were, there may be a vacant lot, and then there's maybe 3 or 4 lots that tie into that vacant lot. We would access from land there, or we have the ability to walk our equipment onto the vacant lot parcel. And then our intention was we could walk the machines and equipment down the 12-foot limits of construction zones in those areas. We understand that any portion of land that we would access through, we would have to restore back to its original condition, and we want to do it with minimal impacts to homeowners, if any. So if we're looking and there's not enough room, we're going by water anyways.
So okay, thanks for the clarification. If there are some seawalls down where there's empty lots, the yacht club is one. I mean, you could access that one, and that's not a problem. There's going to be lots that are right adjacent to empty lots that you can access by land. That's fine. you're not driving your stuff over my lot to get to the neighbor's lot to fix. So you're going to have to go by water for that. If that's what we're talking about, and it's going to be on a case-by-case basis, and somebody may choose to allow you to go over their landscaping to get to somebody else's property, and that would be fine, but I don't think that the majority of people are going to want that, and nobody's going to want a seawall panel lifted over their house. Right. So my question then still is, under those conditions, is the bid that you submitted still valid, or knowing that I think the majority of what you do is going to have to be by barge, is your bid still valid?
Yes, our price in the bid is still valid. We do this work all the time. We rebuilt a lot of the Panhandle after Hurricane Michael. Very familiar with this type of work. Very familiar with homeowners and dealing with them on a case-by-case basis. Each individual site is going to have to be agreed upon quantity-wise with all you guys ahead of time, or in a city inspector of some sort. So at that time, we will identify each site, identify our access of each site, and do all the things that we need to do to keep the homeowners happy. By all means, we will absolutely access by barge. We have the equipment, we have everything we need to do so, and our number in the bid is reflective of by land or water, whichever way.
Okay. All right.
Are you willing to do all of them by barge?
Yes, we can if need be.
And I'm good with that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Personally, I don't think that's something that we need to qualify. I think it's on a case-by-case basis. As long as the bid remains the same, if they go to Mr. Smith's door and say, this is what we need to do, and Mr. Smith says no, then they can go by water. I don't, it's on the record, his bid's going to be the same. I think it's up to them to talk to the homeowner at this point. I don't think it's something we should restrict.
And just but so you guys understand, we've looked through the sites. We understand that the majority of them that we've identified and looked at are not accessible by land. We 100% understand that. Our other methods of vacant lots, or maybe there's a big space, no one has a fence, and we could go in there, we'll resod everything, work directly with the homeowner. That's all on us. Anything outside the limits of the construction is on RJ Gorman.
It's not just the property that's getting the new seawall. It's the adjacent property if it's built on. You only have 15 feet between houses. And you're going to be not only accessing the property owner's property that has the seawall being replaced, but you're going to have to cross over onto the other person's property. That's where it's going to get sticky, and I don't like that idea at all. I'm not support.
So specifically what I was speaking about is if there was two properties that were adjacent with seawall spanning both of them that were identified. That's it. I'm not talking about going through a neighbor's yard that doesn't have a seawall that has to be repaired and then, messing up his yard. We're not discussing that way.
I had your exact same concern. You can't be going over somebody else's property to get there. Now, if somebody wanted to give you access and permission, but I don't think that's going to happen. Yeah. And I don't think we should assume that would happen either.
Yeah.
Agreed.
I would like to state that I would like to officially request that all of it be done by water. I think it makes a cleaner decision all the way around.
Does that include transportation of any type of materials, panels, dirt?
Well, the panels all have to be delivered by either a city truck or it comes in by a barge. Yes? Kathy?
Panels will be picked up by a crane truck from the yard, the public works yard, and they will be transported to a stage lot. Okay, now the contractor can either move those panels using another truck to the project site or put them on a barge and float them that way. They've been delivered both ways.
Mayor. Again, this is not our company. This is their company. They're assuming liability, whether it be on the homeowners or the adjacent property. They've been on record stating that they're aware of that. I am okay with them doing their job the way that they see fit, as long as they understand that probably maybe the majority will not, but I don't think that's for us to decide. I think it's as long as their bid is the same, regardless of how they access, and as long as they understand that they are liable for any damage they do on either property, I'm okay with moving forward with it.
Mark?
I'm okay accessing accessible lots, empty lots by land, and directly adjacent lots by land, because I could see where that's more efficient, and it's going to wind up being faster because you could be working there and working a barge somewhere else. So I get it, but I just want to be very clear that I don't think we should ever assume that we're going to transit somebody else's lot to get to a lot.
Correct.
To a seawall, and we're not going to lift anything over or go between any houses. And with those clarifications, I'm okay.
I still have an issue with, so how are you going to get the panels into the water from a vacant lot? You're going to still have to have a barge there, yeah?
Yeah, but I mean, if you said everything has to be by water, if we wanted to transport panels to a vacant lot, unload them, push our barge to that vacant lot and have a forklift load them, or a piece of machine of some sort, even a crane that's on the barge, load them onto the barge. That's all I was.
Well, that's different. That's different than what we've been talking about. We were told that the whole process would be that you would be going through people's yards to get to the seawall area, and that's what we're having an issue with.
If there was access if there was a property that deemed accessible, that we could utilize, that was not, a half and half, if two properties had adjacent seawall across them that we could utilize and there was enough room, that was our intention. Only if that was accessible that way, but honestly, what we've seen down there, there's very few, handfuls of sites that we can access from land.
PGI is 94.8% built out.
Yep, I'm aware of that.
This becomes a huge problem. And I'm very concerned about this whole thing.
We have all the equipment. Procurement's been provided with our whole equipment fleet. We have everything ready to go, and we intend on bringing all of our water equipment that is needed to do the work down here as well. But if we can do some work that's land-based and essentially decrease the amount of time it's going to take us to do the work, in our opinion, that would generate a more happy homeowner, because their seawall's done faster and we can get this work done a little bit faster. So if there was properties that we could access through adjacent lots, different things like that, that was our intention, that we could get this work done faster.
Okay, but you still, again, I go back to my point. You still have to have a barge to actually do the installation of the panels and the removal of the old panels.
Which we do have a barge. We own multiple barges, cranes.
But what the mayor's asking is, can you replace the seawall without having any equipment waterworks?
Right. And I don't see that happening.
Can we replace it? Say that again.
You won't be able to take the old panels out and put the new panels in without being a barge-motivated thing, right?
Can you do that on a property that you described that was vacant or had space, et cetera, without having a barge in the
Yeah, I mean, in that regard, you got a vacant lot, right? We have seawall panels stacked up in there. The seawall replacement, or what needs to be restored, runs for 4 lots adjacent to that. We would stay within the limits of construction, 12 feet behind the seawall, pull a panel out, or a few of them, and then we would put them back in the same exact way with an excavator.
But you're doing it by barge. No.
I thought you were asking me to describe how we would do it from land.
Okay.
You would do that, what you just described, you would do that without a barge?
That portion, yes. If the site deemed that we needed a barge, we would load the panels on the barge, load our excavator on the barge, push it all around to the canal where we need to go. We would do all the work from the barge.
They do it both ways.
So here's an empty lot. Here's a house. Seawall's fine. The next house down, seawall's bad. You're going to do that by barge. You're not going to go across this first guy's lot to get to that lot.
Correct.
Everything on that lot.
There's no reason to tear up that guy's yard or anything that's back there.
So here's a seawall. Or here's an empty lot. Directly adjacent property, bad seawall. That one you could probably do from the land. You might not need a barge for that, and you're not transiting anybody else's property.
Correct.
Okay, last one. Here's an empty lot. Seawall's bad. You could do that completely from the land without a barge.
Correct.
Okay. All of those scenarios I'm okay with. The ones that I would be unhappy with is if you got to transit somebody else's yard that doesn't have a bad seawall to get to somebody's seawall, bad. If you got to go over a house, bad. If you got to go between houses, bad. That's where I'm at. So I'm okay doing the ones that are under those conditions by land to speed the process up. I get that. but we don't want to have any situations where we're transiting somebody else's property. We don't want to have any situations where we're going over a house or between houses. Under those conditions, I think I'm okay with where we're at.
And just to reiterate your points,
if my understanding is correct.
That is our plan. To reiterate what you just said, that is exactly how we intend to go through each site and figure all this stuff out. We plan on, identifying everything ahead of time, going through everything with the city inspector, making sure the quantities are good, we're all mutually agreed upon before the work starts. Progress photos will be taken, all that stuff will be done throughout the process, and that's exactly what you described is exactly how we intended to do it.
Okay.
My questions haven't been answered, but okay. Yes.
And if I could ask a couple questions, please. How are the other contractors going to be conducting their operations? Is it the same way as this company, or all by barge?
All by barge.
Okay. And how, I know you're very familiar with the Shoreline Foundation case that we were involved in. Have adequate provisions been made either in the contract or the way we're going to implement this, the contract, or in the solicitation process to avoid the issues that arose in those cases, in that case?
It is clearly identified in the bid solicitation that they are estimated quantities and that FEMA will be coming to solidify the quantities in their review of the project. FEMA has told us not to wait, especially for the areas that are, have erosion. So they've identified that we should move forward with the solicitation. So again, it's in our solicitation that it is estimated quantities, and they can be revised based on FEMA's site visits.
Okay, and so have we asked for anything in addition to what was asked for in the shoreline procurement from these contractors, or the one that's before us today, to confirm that they understand that they're not going to be able to make change orders if there's a reduction in the amount of work that they were going to be allowed to do under the solicitation?
Again, the solicitation is based on a unit price.
Right, but so is Shoreline. Mm-hmm. And the issue there was that, they claimed that the mobilization price was included as part of their total bid price, and because there was a substantial reduction in the quantities that they were going to do, that they wanted to get reimbursement for their mobilization costs because it wasn't going to be recouped in the cost of the per item.
And I believe part of that was the city's inspections of all of the zones were not completed prior to letting the solicitation. Therefore, when the city completed their inspections of all the sites, that's where the reduction in the quantities from the initial part from the time that of the solicitation to the award. That's where the reduction came in, because it was let before all of the city's inspections were completed.
Okay, have we?
This case.
Yeah, go ahead.
This case, the canal maintenance has performed all of the inspections of the sites.
So I just also want to, for the record, remind you that these estimates are based on surface damage. We couldn't even get close to some of these seawalls. So we had to base a lot of our estimates based on aerial information, GIS information. So that's why we say that these estimates, they're just estimates to the best of our ability. But we expect some of the replacements to be actually more and not less.
So I think what needs to be in the contracts is no guaranteed minimum. Simple. I mean, to a best of our ability, we've identified everything. We maybe did a better job than we did during Irma, but there were two issues with shoreline, as I understand. One was there was no guaranteed minimum clause, and because there was a minimum, they had that argument. My understanding, the other clause that we should put in there, my understanding was shoreline did not attend all the meetings, so they weren't really participating in everything, and they just kind of went off and started doing work. So I think that all the contractors need to be involved in every meeting that the city staff has regarding this, that they have a representative there, that they sign off that they've been there and they understand what the discussions were, so there's no confusion going forward. And then there should be there's no guaranteed minimum clause. We have to have that clause in there.
Well, it may be too late to have that clause in here now, given the fact that the contract was part of the solicitation. But I don't think it would be a problem to send letters to each of the contractors and ask them to acknowledge or recognize the city's position, while these are estimates, that there is no guaranteed minimum.
I'll let you address it. I'm sorry? We may, if you'd like to approve it with the, on the basis that a letter of understanding will be executed along with the agreement, provided the contractor executes a letter of understanding that there is no minimum or maximum guarantees, that it's a unit-based price contract.
I think we have to have that for legal sake. Is that, if we can do that, I would absolutely ask for that.
Well, I don't know that we could, I don't know that we can approve it subject to them signing that agreement. I'm just thinking, to cover ourselves, we approve it, but then ask them to recognize that it is their understanding under the agreements that there is no absolute minimum. I mean, guaranteed.
Or maximum.
No, I'm sorry. There's no guaranteed minimum. It just will protect us a little bit. I don't think, as I said, I don't think we can make a condition of the contract.
Bill?
David, I'm truly uneasy about this, trying to do the work from the land side. If we make it conditional about everything being done from the water, can we do that with this, the way the bid was done?
Well, and that's why I was asking Ann what the specifications were.
There was no items listed in the document whether it had to be performed by land or by water. So if there is a revision to the specifications, then we would have to start over.
Having been through this process with my seawall, I can tell you that I would never have allowed all kinds of traffic going back and forth on my property. I have a real hard time believing any resident would want that to happen. And I understand the situation with vacant lots, but they're few and far between. And we don't necessarily have a lot of vacant lots that we can even stage on. And so I'm very concerned about this. We've never had a situation where we had a contractor that wanted to do this. I'm still very uneasy about it. And knowing how much work had to be done water side, I can't imagine that any of this work could be done from the land. I'm having a real hard time wrapping my head around this. I don't know. I'm not comfortable with it. Have we also clarified with FEMA that the seawalls that were Irma replacement seawalls will also be part of their reimbursement project?
Kristen Simeone again. We have let them know that some of those were damaged. There's no decision yet whether they will reimburse us on those same walls again.
Okay.
We have 40,000 feet plus or minus of seawater replaced, 7.25 miles, and we've broken that into zones. We've looked, you look at the total price, you can do the numbers and see $600-700 per foot to do that. But out of that 40,000, there was 144 feet that were Irma seawalls. So very minor comparatively.
Correct.
Okay, so the next question is, where does the money come from that is going to be the city's part of this? Because that was not budgeted.
Correct. So for, we'll use the seawall program funds that we currently have, so
Right.
this year's current, and then again, as we develop next year's budget, that as well. And again, it's a reimbursement grant, so as quickly as we make our payments, we can turn around, usually at least, monthly or bi-monthly, request reimbursements.
If indeed we were talking about 10%, just to make numbers easy, and we were looking at, because we're estimating, if we were looking at 4,000 feet at $600 a linear foot, so that would be about 2.4 to 2.8 if you use 700 a linear foot, so we'd be looking at 2.5 to 3 million. That would be city cost under that premise. If indeed, they determine that Category 5 and they're going to increase the 75% to something higher, then of course we would be lower.
And the other option is we could do what we did in Irma and request a line of credit. So we could go, work with our financial advisor if you'd like us to pursue that, just to have that safety net, I guess, if you'd like, of having that available.
It's all cash flow.
We may have to do that because we didn't have it budgeted, obviously, because budget was already done at that point. But there's concern about, are we going to then fall back delinquent on what our original intended schedule was for 2023? Because we're going to have to use some of that money that's in the seawall fund.
Well, yes, we would not be doing the 23 program because the higher priorities are the walls that were damaged by the hurricane.
And do we have, just one second, and do we have enough money in the riprap program to do all of the new seawalls also?
So again, that would be a hazard mitigation that we're going to suggest to FEMA to do the same thing what we did with Irma. So the Irma funds are still set aside. We don't have, we're still waiting on their environmental review, I believe, now that we have our permit to do the riprap.
We probably, although the permit does give us additional footage for riprap around various inlets and different things that we can use, the $8 million that typically put riprap in front of the Irma walls is not enough to even do that, much less anymore, because price is going up. It's not $8 million anymore, it's probably 12.
Yeah.
So.
And we have mentioned that to them too as well, but I don't know that again, those funds were set aside several years ago from FEMA. They may not increase it for us.
The cost has gone up since 18,
yeah,
for sure.
Mr. Levin?
Yeah, I have a question for the representative from RJ Gorman.
Yep.
You expressed on the record your intentions with respect to, utilizing the land upland if you could and utilizing the water if you couldn't. Would you be willing to agree to obtain written consent from any of the upland owners that you needed to access or wanted to access from land to provide to the city of that written consent by the owner, and thereby we won't require you to do everything by water, but it'd be well documented that you've got the consent to utilize the upland when that becomes expeditious, and not only for the city, but for yourself.
Yeah, I mean, obviously utilizing the vacant lots, we'll have to pull permits to even be there in the vacant lot, right? Outside of that, that's perfectly fine. That's easily something we can do. Again, we're not trying to impact homeowners and trying to have minimal impacts to homeowners, but if there was a way that made it faster and we could deliver the same quality product in a faster timeline, our intention was that maybe people would be happier that their seawalls are done faster and we could get this work done faster. That is the only thing. So as far as getting that written consent and providing that to you guys, if we were to choose to access like that, that's no problem at all.
Okay. So you'd be okay if the city approved the contract subject to that agreement?
Yep, absolutely. And to be honest with you, if we were going to access anybody's site anyways, we would obtain that written consent for our own records just because we would need to, for our own legal obligations.
We may have to support some of that because if indeed that case arises, some may have already left for the season, and we may have contacts for those property owners that you wouldn't have access to immediately.
Okay, yeah,
Because
that's
there's a
fine.
lot that have already talked to us about leaving in May, and when's my seawall going to be finished, and we
I mean, our intention is when we send the letter out, that's going to identify the 6 weeks, right? Before that time, we plan on meeting with every single homeowner that we're going to be in the backyard, so they know us, giving them our contact list. Here's, foreman all the way through owner of company. If you guys need anything, here's our contact list, regardless of, whichever way we would access. But that is our intention through this thing. We do not, as soon as you get a distressed homeowner from your work, we're kind of screwed. Everyone talks, and it's just going to be, we've dealt with it before and seen other contractors do it, and it can be a big bear to take on, especially if we're going to be here for a year and a half. Our intention is not to make homeowners unhappy or do damage to any of their structures, house, utility lines, any of that stuff. That is not our intention by all means, because we understand how that can drastically affect a project and timelines and schedule and materials and all that stuff, and that's not something that we're wanting to do.
Excuse me. For the record, I would also like to mention that during a typical seawall replacement process, the sod is delivered between the houses. They are accessing the property from the road when they deliver the sod. When they pour the concrete cap, that concrete truck is sitting in the road, and that pipe is led between the two houses to the back of the property. So every contractor is going to have to access that property between the houses. I just wanted to
But that wouldn't be any different than a normal seawall, what MCG normally does through our normal maintenance.
Correct.
So that's not an issue. The issue was what the mayor was trying to get at. I'm trying to wrap my head around how you're going to get heavy equipment between the houses and how you're going to get seawalls over houses. That was my issue. If we need to do things that are just in a normal course of maintenance, that's fine. But it's those other issues that become problematic, and crossing other people's property to access a property becomes problematic.
I agree.
You can see that this whole discussion is why more recently we've had additional conversations with the contractor to verify. And that's one of the reasons that we looked at the 3 different contractors' bonding capacity, assigned specific zones so we know specific quantities, and we've looked at all these things so that we could get it to this point so you could discuss this.
Okay, any other questions before we move it forward?
So we are looking for approval and appropriation of funds.
So I will move to award the agreements with the stipulation that if any work is done by land, that the contractors get written permission from the owners or adjacent owners. Is that,
And that there's no guaranteed minimum. Those 2 stipulations.
Well, I don't know that we can do that.
You're fine.
We can't make that a condition of the contract unilaterally. I think what we need to do, though, is send a letter of understanding, so it's on record. So if you want to modify the motion to suggest that staff will send letters to all of the contractors advising them that there is no guaranteed minimum, and ask them to respond acknowledging that that's the city's position.
So moved.
And would that hold up?
And the appropriation.
Would that hold up in court if we had a dispute over the minimums?
Well, I guess it would depend on the judge, but at least it helps our position a little bit.
How about if I start over?
And if you're going to start over, that motion about private property is outside the normal course. For example, if they use a vacant lot for just staging, that's private property, but we permit that individually. So it's not just all private property that they have to go to the property owner and get agreement for. That's not correct. For example, MCG right now can have a private or have a piece of property that's a vacant lot that they put seawall panels, different things that they stage on. And that's not something they go to the property owner, they go to us to get a permit. They don't go directly to the property owner. So we're talking the difference between construction and normal course of operations for seawall replacement.
Okay, so I will make a motion to award the agreements to the contractors, stating that they have to have written consent from owners, right? Also, that staff is going to be sending out a letter for the contractors to acknowledge that there will be no guarantee of a minimum or maximum on units. And what else did I forget?
Appropriation of funds.
And appropriation of the funds. Does that sound right, Mr. Levin?
I believe so.
Okay.
I'll second it.
Okay. We have a motion and a second, as stated by Vice Mayor Lockhart and seconded by Councilmember Peterman. And I'm not going to reiterate it on the record at this point. Any further discussion?
I have a question. So do we need to adjourn as city council and approve the appropriation as the canal committee procedurally and then come back and approve it again as council? I'm just procedurally. I mean, normally when we do things in the canal district, we have to do it as the canal district, and then we have to redo it again as the city.
Yeah, I'm not sure. And like when we did our reappropriations, we did not do that particular process. So I would check with Attorney Levin to double check, and we could bring it back at another time for the appropriation.
I was going to say, let's go ahead and approve it as the city council and then bring it back for ratification by the individual districts.
Right, because we're appropriating funds, we're not changing rates or.
Okay. We have a motion and a second on the floor. Any further discussion? All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
Okay, the motion carries 4-1. Thank heavens we got through that one. Okay. And just for last comment, do we have a timeline on when we're starting on this? Anybody? Can anybody answer that?
It should be within, I would say, 20 days. They have 10 days to provide bonding, their bonding capacity and their bonds for payment and performance bonds and insurance and so forth. We'll have a pre-construction meeting, and then they'll have they have a certain time to start. So I would say within 20 to 30 days.
Okay.
Could be sooner.
Very good. Thank you. And thank you guys for being here.
So really, June 1st.
Yeah, good.
Beginning of hurricane season, we'll see it.
Yeah, sooner the better.
So we could schedule a meeting for the city council sitting as the advisory districts, sitting as the districts for the May 17th meeting, I would think. That would be good timing.
Okay. Let's pack a lunch day for a city council meeting. Okay, city clerk.
Karen Smith, City Clerk for the record. Under boards and committees, we have some vacancies still to announce. Code Enforcement Board, we have 2 alternates. Historic Preservation Advisory Board, 2 alternates. We do have an applicant that's coming forward for one of those. And we have a new vacancy on the Utility Advisory Board. Under nominations, Code Enforcement Board, we have 2 seats and we have 2 applicants. If you'd like to nominate and appoint, it's your option.
Anyone? Does anyone want to make a nomination or? I'm hearing nothing. Okay. I guess
it would have helped if one of the, or both of the individuals would have come and introduced themselves, but without an introduction, you're just reading a piece of paper. So I guess the feedback that I would give them would be, if you're interested, come and introduce yourself.
I believe we have several applicants who are coming to the May 3rd meeting when appointments are made.
Yeah.
If you'd still like to go ahead and nominate, we can at least move the process forward. It doesn't mean you have to appoint them if they don't come. I believe Mr. Ritz was coming to the May 3rd meeting. I have that situation with the Housing Authority as well.
So at this
where
point,
they
we should
couldn't be
just...
here today.
So we should just nominate all at this point? Is that correct?
And then, right, and there's no obligation to appoint them if they don't show up.
I'll go ahead and nominate.
Okay. For the Planning Commission, we have one alternate seat, and we have 2 interested applicants.
I would move to nominate and appoint Catherine Antona. She introduced herself previously at a meeting, and I was impressed with her.
You want to nominate and appoint?
And appoint.
Yeah, I agree.
That's a motion and a second, then?
Okay, we have a motion and a second to nominate and appoint Kathleen Antona to the alternate seat on Planning Commission. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries unanimously.
Thank you. And then last, for nominations for the Punta Gorda Housing Authority, we do have 3 applicants, including Reverend Shaw, who is the incumbent for one of the seats.
I would like to nominate Ms. Washington and Mr. Shaw.
I'll second it.
We have a motion and a second to nominate and appoint Mr. Shaw and Ms. Washington to the Housing Authority Board. Any further discussion? All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries unanimously.
Just to clarify, you're nominating and appointing those 2?
I'm sorry, yes, I apologize.
Thank you. Okay.
That's what you said,
all I
right?
have. Thank you.
Did I say? Oh, I don't know what I said.
That was what you said, right? You did say nominate and appoint.
Yeah, and I second it, so I heard it.
Very good, thank you.
All right, City Manager.
I have a couple things. One, I just wanted to reiterate some of the projects that we're moving forward, things like the seawall discussion, very good discussion. And one of the reasons that we're not only discussing, but bringing that forward is because we're pushing hard to get some of these things moving. Obviously, FEMA has been a little bit behind the 8 ball after Ian, much broader scope, I understand, and staffing shortages, whatever the case may be, but we still need to get some things finished. So things like the discussion you had are very instrumental in us kind of having the approvals in hand to push to get the things we need, like the inspection confirmations, the confirmation for funding, et cetera, because we have to move these things. The other thing is that some of our projects that we had damage from Ian, while we're moving forward with them, like I enumerated earlier, some of these are taking higher precedence when we look at City Hall and we look at AC Freeman and we look at some big dollar projects, and we know the pricing continues to go up. Once we have everything secure, we have all this on the list, and we're moving all these forward. And I say that to say that when we talk about 1% sales tax, you hear that discussed a lot, and how we can use that, especially the excess we anticipate, because we do have funding sources that are restricted. So for example, we can't just say we're going to take 1% sales tax and all of a sudden decide to do X, Y, Z with it. So in some cases, when we do have that excess, we need to use that where we can, so that we know the other city money that we have available that's unrestricted, so to speak, we can use for some additional costs we're going to have coming up, like if we're going to replace everything on the 3rd floor in the annex. That's not all going to be covered by insurance. When we look at the Bayfront Center and what we need to do for that, we may need some additional funding for that. So we're looking at our total funding matrix for our capital plan, and that's what you're going to see when we come in and discuss that, what we can do with our restricted and unrestricted funds so that we can get the maximum use from the funding we have, and we can leverage that to get these projects moving forward and completed. So I'd like to thank all the work the staff has done to help get these things going. There's still a lot to do, but we have a lot that's moving forward now. And as you can see from the type meetings we're having, we have a lot of things that need approved so that we can continue to keep the train rolling down the track. So thank you for your latitude in that and for the work that we're getting accomplished.
Thank you. City Attorney.
Thank you. On behalf of our firm, I'd like to thank you for extending our contract. Appreciate it.
Yeah, we're stuck with you for a while. Okay. City Clerk, anything additional?
Nothing further, thank you.
Okay. Under my comments, I just have a few things. You all know that tomorrow morning at 10 a.m. is the Arbor Day planting of the trees on Gill Street near Gill and Charlotte, I believe it is, yeah? You're encouraged to be there if you can be. Next Tuesday, Honor Flight, Punta Gorda Airport, 8:30 p.m., the arrival home of the Honor Flight group. I would love to see all of us out there in red, white, and blue supporting our veterans who are coming home that day. We have a few people from our city staff that are involved in that from the fire department, and they're going to be going as EMS and chaperone. It's always a wonderful, wonderful event. Thursday next week at noon, I would really like to see all of us there in front of the City Hall Annex Building, the National Day of Prayer service at noon on Thursday. And also that same day at 6:30 p.m. at the School District Office on Education Way in Port Charlotte, there's going to be a meet and greet reception for the 5 superintendent candidates for the school superintendent job, and all the people that are involved in an elected office are being invited to go and meet the candidates if you would like to do so. So if you need any information on any of that stuff, I'll be happy to share it.
When was the date of that last one?
May 4th.
May 4th?
Yep, next week. Just got the word 2 days ago, so that's the same day as the National Day of Prayer service, which is at noon. Okay, council member comments. Ms. Peterman?
Nothing further, thank you.
Ms. Lockhart?
I do. I would like to suggest and get consensus. I would like to put on the agenda, the next agenda, that the city is owed an adjustment from the rent dues from having to be forced to cancel our meeting last week, and also because we've had to incur costs due to meeting here.
Okay. Can we handle that?
We typically would, like we did today, even with that, bringing that back, would like the request to be made, and then consensus that we put that on the agenda. We would then research, put it on the agenda for next meeting, and then we would have the full discussion and any action that the council takes, chooses to take.
Okay. Mr. Dryberg?
Greg, has the...
So, is there a consensus to put that on or not to put that on? That's what we needed for that request.
Oh, I'm sorry.
So I guess what I would like is have that added so we can have a discussion.
Okay. Does anyone have a problem with that?
No.
Okay.
Greg, the control box for the lights and stuff on Marion, are we getting any closer to getting to that thing? You know?
Let's see, who can I dump that on? Let's see here. That's the property owner that has the brick wall that's collapsed. I know Code's been working on them repeatedly to try to get something done there. Do we know any additional information? Is the property owner due a response back at any point?
Can we sneak in behind her and just remove all the bricks so we can get to it?
Yeah, the trouble is the wall.
Yeah, I know.
There's a lot of stability issues there, and of course it's private property.
Okay. I get that question a lot.
Yep.
That's why I keep bringing it up.
We need the power back on there because it's our street lights and everything. So.
Yeah, we have a lot of complaints about that.
Next thing I have is and you guys are already noting, so just for the audience, what a jewel we have with our city manager. He just does an outstanding job. Call from a merchant, and it was a little glitch, and I called Greg, and within an hour he had it fixed. The merchant's happy as can be, and he just does an outstanding job, and I just want to make sure everybody knows how I feel. what the job he does. Does a great job.
I appreciate that. It's kind of you. We have a very good staff.
Yeah, you do. Sure.
Take credit for
Good people. And lastly, I asked for a copy of the contract for the land sale to Fisherman's Village. It's 75 pages long. So if anybody has any trouble with insomnia, if you read that, you'll definitely go to sleep. I guarantee you that. But in that contract, it states in there were certain things that are supposed to be performed as part of that sale. And if I'm wrong, please correct me. There's a number of items that were supposed to be performed, were not. And we're coming up, even with invoking the clause dealing with outside, without our control, mainly hurricanes, that pushes it to 8 years. This is the 8th year, and the month is September. So I would like to suggest that we look at our attorney to look at the reverter clause that's in that document, and come September, whatever date that is, that we revert that property back.
There's the original from 2015 that does exactly what you just said.
Right.
Then there was another amendment, Amendment 2 in 2018,
right,
which then brings it, instead of 23, the 5 years to 24, because even though it was in 18, the city for some reason didn't sign it until 19. So, I mean, we can get more detail, but I don't know why, because it was approved in 18.
Right.
But in 19, then, the initial term was 5 years, which takes it to 24.
Okay.
So we have a year's time in there or so, but what you said is exactly right. But when you, I think David's done a lot of research on that and could probably very adequately address it, but one of the questions was the signature date between 18 and a year later when it was approved by council and then signed a year later. That kind of delays it technically for a year for the 5-year period.
I'd agree with that. I think in an abundance of caution, the drop dead date would be August 22nd, 2024.
Okay.
For the 5-year.
All right. All right.
Yep.
We'll talk about it. We'll talk about it next year then, for sure.
Discussion is still very appropriate.
Yep. I agree. I agree.
There may be a need to give further consideration if in fact there is a serious intent to sell the property, however. So when that becomes ripe for discussion, I'll be prepared to address that as well.
Thank you, David. Appreciate that very much.
Mr. Kuharski?
Nothing.
Okay.
I'll say one more thing.
Oh, jeez.
You almost got through.
Yeah, go ahead.
I neglected to mention during CRA that, of course, there is a vacancy, and I believe you had mentioned that earlier.
Oh, that's right, too, yes, I'm sorry. Yeah, Mr. Council has resigned his seat on CRA because he's relocating, so I guess we need to discuss what we want to do going forward. If we want to have the county commission, I believe they've already advertised for a replacement for that seat. So we need to decide if we want to fill that seat, or in light of the fact that we potentially could be sunsetting this organization, the CRA organization, within the next 2 years, do we fill that seat or leave it vacant?
And since next week our meeting happens to be a CRA meeting again, that would be a time that could be discussed since the seat is vacant now.
I think that should be added, yeah, for sure.
And if you want to present anything to Mr. Council or send him a little note of thanks or anything.
Oh, yeah, well, I'll have to see if he's still in town, I'm not really sure. Okay. Okay, with no further business, we are adjourned.